5,000 owners, right? However many owners, especially if it's an LLC or another company. So then the entity or people that own that parcel, they designate one voting representative per election, and then that voting representative casts the ballot.
Okay, I see that, I mean, that's a large number of parcels that Scientology itself owns, right?
Well, there's a little bit over 900 eligible parcels, and I don't remember the total that they own, but that are eligible to vote, but it's less than 50.
Less than 50? And then Ray Casano, who sits on the board, he apparently controls more than 60 properties?
Yes.
So the two of those entities together, Scientology and Ray Casano, that delivers half of the votes that, for instance, Ray Casano needs to get reelected to the seat.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, right? Because we can't force people to vote, right, as we see in our own election. So out of the 900 plus eligible parcels, we only had around 350 votes this time. So what you just said would depend on who voted in any given year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just think it's important to point out, because people see the news stories about, oh, more Scientologists being added to the Downtown Development Board, and they think that Scientology controls the city. But that's not the case. Unfortunately, it's tilted toward them in this section here. So I think Ray Casano won with like 254 votes. Mm-hmm. Half of those came directly from, you know, the church and Ray, and then all the other Scientologists who live downtown or own property, condos, whatever. I mean, they're voting too. So I'm not sure how fair it is to heavily weight a system like that.
Well, the property owners pay the extra tax. Mm-hmm. So the owners of that parcel pay an additional 0.97 mil in taxes that fund the Downtown Development Board. And those property owners then get to vote for who represents them on that board.
Yeah, but if there was a giant AT&T presence down here, and AT&T was controlling the elections, I think people would be concerned about it.
Well, but there would only be one vote per parcel that they have.
Yeah,
I mean, our responsibility is to make certain that the elections for the DDB are proper and fair, but we don't control outcomes.
No, and I'm not saying that Scientologists should not be elected to the board. I'm just saying that it does not seem like what we think of as a fair and equitable election.
Ms. Aiken, you want to weigh in on that?
I know that freeholder elections are unusual for us. This is the only one you'll see in this community, but historically they've been around for a long time. And it's the people who pay the tax, as Amanda stated, that vote on who's going to assess that tax and spend it. So it's not unusual. This was set up by the legislature back in 1970, I believe. And so it's the people who are paying it are voting for the people who represent them.
Do you have anything else?
Nope.
Councilmember Beckman?
So there's the possibility that there are 900 parcels, so we can have 900 votes for these elections, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And so you're worried about the weight of the elections because people haven't shown up to vote, is that correct?
Yeah.
All right, so we got to get people to show up and vote, people who care.
But it seems like there's a very limited amount of time that people are informed that an election's coming up.
Well, I would respectfully disagree, and that this year we made a very deliberate effort. We directly mailed to every single property, all 900 of those. This is when the election is. They received a postcard. They received a follow-up letter with a registration form. with all of that. And then every single person we had registrations forms for, which is around 600, they received a ballot. And the Downtown Development Board was absolutely supportive of that. They pay for it. They authorized to do it, right? So, I mean, getting 2 pieces of direct mail, in addition to advertising through our social media channels. And of course, we were aided by Tampa Bay Times articles, had more questions than ever about the DDB. I can objectively say we've had more effort this year in encouraging vote than any prior year. But as we know, it's just, people are busy, right? Or they might not see the direct benefit. And that's another thing that we're working on too. And that, you know, the policies and functions in the ordinance point out is this is to support downtown businesses. And all of the DDB funding has gone to support all of the downtown businesses. They help fund the boat slips, right? I mean, Councilmember Albritton, you were on the DDB. I'm sure you know the list of projects better than I do. I guess what I hope people really take away is that the DDB is a very powerful tool that downtown has for ongoing funding, almost in perpetuity, to help support downtown businesses in a more flexible way than even the general fund allows. So it's really important people are engaged and involved.
And I'm not trying to suggest there's anything nefarious about this. I just think it's the perception problem. So, and I think it's important for people in the city here to understand.
Yes.
So, you know, I won't go into it.
No.
No, I was just going to add what Councilmember Beckman said. She actually asked my question, or answered my question. In my experience with DDB, we've had very, very low voter turnout. And over the years I've been affiliated, trying to get people to understand that vote, it's their right to vote. As you said, 900 properties. And we get, you know, maybe when I was there, we'd get 100 votes, you know. And a lot of those votes weren't even signed right, because I participated in sometimes looking at the signatures, and, you know, a lot of them were tossed out. So, you know, if people don't like it, their simple remedy is go vote. And, you know, just probably need to, and I know the paper does a good job of advertising it this year, you know, what's going on, so you just can't force people to do that. But
Bless you. When was the last time that this was changed?
There were some minor amendments in the early 90s,
Okay.
but it hasn't been substantially rewritten since the 80s.
So that's why commission is still in here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's why a lot of old things
Because I think
are
we
in here.
changed in '08
Or earlier,
from
yes.
commission to council. So why are some of the paragraphs, for instance, paragraph 2 on page 3, why are some of these being struck? Because unfortunately, some of the descriptions in paragraph 2, item 3, are still true.
So that was cleaned up because when the DDB ordinance was first made, it was prior to Community Redevelopment Agency. And so their scope was much broader. So now the Downtown Development Board, you know, they really probably would not enter into brownfield grants, so dealing with unsuitable topography, or they would not participate in land assemblies, so faulty lot layouts. So it's really just, they're not going to redo road design.
It's clarifying roles.
Right, it's really honing them in onto that marketing, community engagement, business assistance type roles.
Okay. Any other questions?
I do.
Councilmember Beckman?
Are you looking at the document, Amanda, like page by page? Because there were a few little questions.
I have the
Okay,
page number.
so on page 3, at the top paragraph, I have, under insufficient infrastructure, insufficient availability of office space and housing, and obsolete and substandard office space and housing. Can you explain that or give me some examples of that? Insufficient infrastructure and insufficient availability of office space, because I see so many closed storefronts and stuff.
Right, so what this would be referring to is at times where they could say, well, we don't have any Class A office space, right? We might have B and C, right, something that's smaller or outdated, but we don't have any new office space, the kind that would attract, say, a major corporation. So if the DDB was asked to be part of providing incentives to build a Class A office space, or to renovate existing vacant spaces to make, to bring them up to modern standards.
And if they were going to provide new, they'd have to tear something down, right? Because we don't have a lot of open space. Okay. And then the third pair, under 3, where you've got a bunch of strikeouts, I have the police power. That wording is just a little strange. I thought policing may be inadequate would simplify that. And then on B, as we go down under 4B, serve as a voice for property owners, businesses, residents, and organizations in the district. And I just wanted just a little clarification on, I understand that the DDB is focused on downtown and revitalizing and advertising for it, but do they ever, or is it part of their mission to engage other residents in the city who don't live downtown as far as running ideas by them or engaging them in any way at all?
Not directly. Like I wouldn't say that this sets that out as part of their core mission, but certainly that's something that.
Point, do you have readily available information on the occupancy rate of all those, businesses downtown or the buildings?
We did when we were doing research to develop the food and drink grant program, we did a survey along the 400 through 700 blocks of Cleveland Street, the main street, and we were at about 60% occupancy at that time. We have not done a full survey of the CRA of what's occupied or unoccupied since then.
And our goal would be, ideally it's 100%, right? That would be a nice goal.
Right. I'm sure that I don't know what the industry standard is
Okay.
for occupation in a given healthy market. And find that out.
Okay. And then on page 4, under E, assist the city and the CRA to provide a way of life which combines the conveniences and amenities of modern living with the traditions and pleasures of the past. Can you give an example of what that combination is?
I'll be honest, this was in the original ordinance, which is why it's written in that interesting language, kind of like a Hallmark card.
Yeah, a little bit. Traditions and pleasures of the past.
And we really just didn't touch it because we weren't really sure how to reword it, to be honest. So, I would say this is the kind of thing where, people enjoy walking, they enjoy outdoor concerts. I'd say for our community, it's that combination of convenience and accessibility, but also the traditions in our community like live music.
Okay. And then why was the one, speaking about, walking downtown and stuff, why was the one underneath stricken, assist the city and the CRA to provide pedestrian safety? Why would you take that one out?
Because we broadened things that got that specific. There's also language in here like print marketing brochures. And getting that detailed isn't particularly helpful in a framework ordinance. So we have, transportation and pedestrian friendliness overall. But if you read something like this and you think, oh, are we supposed to fund, reflective vests for crossing guards downtown, right? It could go that route, and that's not necessarily helpful.
Okay. And then on, that one, I figured that one out. Okay. On page 6, at the top, on number 4, under voting, I'm wondering why are we omitting the section on notification to freeholders?
All of that has been moved to the bylaws.
Okay. And that's probably underneath on number 5, I've got previous number 6, we are leaving it up to the property owners to decide who submits the one ballot, right? Okay. And then, I had under number 8 at the bottom of page 6, the dissolution of the district. That district should probably be capitalized. It's just one little thing. And then On page 7, under section 2.146, eligibility to vote, why are we not using freeholders here? We've got property owners, and you've taken off freeholders. So it's the third line down, you've stricken out freeholders, and you put property owners in there. Why'd you do that? Is it because they have to collectively pay taxes? Well, of course, it's the same thing. I just wondered why that name change was different there.
And I'd have to ask Assistant.
Ms. Winters, do you want to, come on.
Because freeholders is a defined term, and we use property owners there to make it clear that we are talking about property, and not trying to confuse the issue. I didn't want to use the defined term, I was defining the term again here, okay? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to butt in, but I figured I had the answer.
For you at home, this is Elise Winters, the DDB attorney.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
And then the one underneath it, and this is just, so when we talk about any person voting, so we have these indefinite pronouns and we have he or she assigned, how do you guys feel about having there instead of a he or she? And so,
I just have a problem using a plural when I mean a.
I know, I do too, as an English teacher,
Yeah,
I know it, I know,
In my office, we have a journalism major and an English major.
yeah.
So the documents get scrutinized. I mean, one of the things that bugged me most about the old ordinance, if we forget substance is always the most important, was the inconsistency, and that's because it was done before computers were common, so you couldn't go through and do find and replace and fix it all.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not a substantive issue, it's a preference issue.
It is.
And the reason I use he and she is I really have a problem with using there for a singular.
I spent my career teaching he or she, right, but I think we're moving towards a more inclusive language, and I would just, to me, it would be my preference to have there for people who don't identify as either he or she in a particular way. And there's a couple of spots throughout it there. Let's see, I think. Okay, on page 8, there's on the first paragraph at the top, I think that freeholders, there's a capitalization that should be
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what that.
there should be a capitalization of freeholders on that first chunk, first big paragraph. It's kind of in the middle, and enable the freeholders to elect a board member. Yeah, and then there's another one with his, but it doesn't even have his or her, it has perform his duty. That's the last sentence under section 4. So certainly we should have minimally his or her, but it would be nice to have their duty. That's under that 4, and it's the last sentence. And if this is tedious, I know you're standing there. I can send like an email or something if we don't have to vote on these kinds of things.
I mean, I don't mean to interrupt, but I mean, in that, about his duty, I mean, you could change it to attempting in good faith to perform the duties for a decision, not
Yeah.
the duties
Perform
instead
duties,
of
yeah.
his duty or whatever, but, I mean, we can wordsmith this thing to death.
Yes. I think it's best just to
But-
work with staff between now and Thursday if there's something you have
Okay.
real heartburn over, but
Not real heartburn, but okay, that's fine, I can do that. That's something.
Ms. Aiken?
So we will make typos and capitalizations, et cetera. But unless you direct us to go to there instead of he or she, we won't do that. So if you want to direct that, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll just do the typos, the capitalizations, where we clearly have misstated something.
That's fine.
How do you guys feel about theirs with indefinite pronouns? When you say everyone, someone, it means instead of saying his or her, vote, we would say their vote. Are you guys okay with that?
I'm fine with the way it is.
I'm okay with the change, or as Hoyt suggested. I understand what you're getting at. But maybe this is something we can continue.
Well, we have to vote on it Thursday, so it's got to be resolved here because we're not going to get a chance to discuss it as a body between now and then if we want changes. Is there a desire to change it or not? Vice Mayor?
I'm good leaving it the way it is.
Mr. Hamilton?
I don't have a burning desire to change it. It's, I mean, I just, like I said, you can wordsmith this thing to death, but I think the intent and it's well understood what the purpose and what the words mean and whatnot, but I just,
Councilmember Bunker?
I see the value in changing it, but if we don't have the votes for it, have we voted?
We
Yeah, we
can't
got
vote
the-
at work sessions.
Oh, I mean, okay.
We can see if there's consensus.
That, you're right, and I was just wondering if we've seen that yet.
We have not.
Okay. So the only one who hasn't decided is, what, the vice mayor?
Now, the vice mayor said he's fine leaving it the way it is.
Okay. Well, then it looks like we have the votes to keep it the way it is, even though it's not a vote.
We don't have
I understand it's
consensus
not a
to
vote.
change it as what it is.
Right, thank you.
Okay? All right, and then you can work with staff on other punctuation and capitalizations. Any other questions on this item? 3.1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council, we're going to have a parking presentation, parking system presentation from Jeremy Aleshouse. Jeremy is our new parking manager. This is his first presentation. Typically, our new managers don't give presentations so early in their tenure, but I will ask you to treat him nicely since it's his first time. The mayor had asked for a parking system presentation focused in a couple of areas, but as we talked and as I realized, the kind of turbulence that we've had in the parking system manager position, I felt it was a benefit to both Jeremy and to the council for him to give a more comprehensive presentation that addresses not only the mayor's concerns, purposes for having the presentation, but also would give all of us an up-to-date perspective on what's happening with the parking system. Since we're taking a little time to get started, I would also add that as we continue to try and refine and create a more equitable parking system, and all of you, especially the mayor and Albritton and Hamilton, are familiar with the evolution of parking system in Clearwater, we're continuing to find that there are some inequities. As we try to address those inequities, we trigger some concerns among either business owners or patrons. The way they respond to those inequities is to call you all and ask for your help in addressing something that's directly affecting them. So what I told Jeremy as we get through this presentation, as we go forward, we're going to accumulate all those inequities that we think exist within the system. And we're probably going to come back to you and have a conversation about how you want to see those inequities, addressed, because it's particularly challenging for our staff who's trying to do their best to do the right thing, but it creates some dissonance for us when we're trying to do the right thing, and yet, we're getting complaints. So, Jeremy?
Good morning. Thank you, City Council, Mr. Mayor, City Managers. It's my honor and pleasure to be here today to go through our parking system presentation with you. Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry I went through something like you're going through, and hopefully my presentation doesn't make that worse. So I've kind of put together a little bit of an outline of what we're going to discuss, what I'm going to discuss here with you today, kind of going over the why we're doing what we're doing, the philosophies behind it, the best practices, kind of the industry standards. We'll discuss the two different systems we seem to have here. I mean, the downtown is very different than the beach, and how we address those two different areas. We'll discuss our financials, including where the money goes, and then we'll have a section where we're kind of looking ahead and seeing where we're planning on going. And of course, then you'll be asking me questions. I've been here for 6 weeks, so I'll do my best to answer everything I possibly can. But I know that I might fall short on that. But we'll get you the answers as the end all and be all of it. So I think the most important thing is the why a parking system in general. We, if we go back long enough and we can think about, there wasn't a need for this at some point. Well, anybody that drives over the causeway on a Saturday when the weather's nice, they know, we're a draw, right? The beach is a draw. People want to come here. They want to be able to park. They don't want to think about parking. I mean, much like this, I bore some of these folks behind me with this presentation, because we don't tend to want to think about it or consider it. We just want to go there. Parking's the last thing. We're thinking about our destination, what we're going to do there, where we're going to eat, that kind of stuff. We really don't care about parking until it becomes a problem. And then we're irate, angry, ticked off, think that the city's not doing the right job and that kind of thing. So that's the why. That's the why we have the parking system. So as far as the philosophy, this fellow here, Dr. Donald Shoup, he got his PhD in urban planning, city planning. He concentrated on parking, wrote a book. It's a very big book. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not a page turner by any stretch of the imagination. But he discussed a whole bunch of things in there that kind of lay the foundation for most municipal parking systems. So what he looked at, unrestricted free parking is bad for business. And what he means by that is when there's a strong desire for people to congregate in a certain location parking-wise, if there is no turnover in that area, then you'll see the motorists are struggling to get there. They want to find that parking space. They're doing that hunt for that parking space. When they find it, then they're so happy they'll park in there, and they'll tend to overstay then. They'll leave it in, especially if they live in that neighborhood. They'll park it there and they won't leave. Well, if that space happens to be in front of a business, it's bad for that business, because now the customers for that business, they can't find a space. They get frustrated every time I go, to your municipality. I can never find parking. The perception then is there's no parking, and it kind of snowballs and creates a worse off situation. So the way to handle that is metered parking. So on-street parking should be controlled, and the way we do that is by meter. You want to go there, it's a popular place, there's a draw, that's a commodity, right? It's worth something. So if people want to go there, they have to pay. That's going to incentivize them then to make that decision, especially on the street in front of a business. Well, I know it's going to be there. If I'm going down real quick and I just want to grab lunch or something like that, or I want to frequent a business, get in, get my stuff done, and leave, well, then I know the cost of that. I know what it's going to cost, and I'm incentivized to stay for a shorter period of time in that preferred parking spot, thus creating turnover on down the line, making it there for the next person that wants to do the same thing. Also, something that he looked at is then the on-street stuff should be more expensive than the off-street stuff. So then we're incentivizing then again those people that want to come, that they're working downtown or they live near downtown and they don't have off-street parking available to them. So get them in a garage or in a parking lot, get them set up with a monthly permit that's off of the street, so that those street spaces that are more valuable, so that they still have the turnover for those businesses. The way that we go about kind of keeping this system in place is through enforcement, okay? And this is where we get the bad rap. We know our roles. Nobody likes getting a parking ticket, but that's really the only avenue we have available to us to kind of force the issue. If they don't want to pay for their parking, they don't want to park correctly and that kind of stuff, then the only thing that the parking system can do is give them a parking ticket, parking citation, we call it here in Clearwater. But that's, it's not that we revel in that or anything like that. That's just the mechanism that's there and available to us. So we use that, it promotes compliance then. And there is a direct correlation, then you'll see, between the number of citations you write for meter violations and the compliance you get with people paying meters. You'll see them, and if people are paying for their meters, then meter tickets go down, right? And if they're not paying for them, then your revenue comes down, but your parking tickets go up. There's a direct correlation there. But in addition to that, there's also a component of public safety that the parking system provides. If we're finding those people that are parked at fire hydrants, that are double parked, those type of violations, parked in no parking zones. Well, it's probably a no parking zone for a reason. And that reason would be sightline issues at intersections and that kind of stuff, so it's safer for cars to pull out and that type of thing. So we have these things in place to kind of promote that. And, we're a small part, but we are providing a public safety service. And ultimately, it's about altering the behavior of the motorists into complying with our parking system and hopefully parking safely. So then we get into best practices, and this is kind of the industry standard. These pictures here on the bottom of the thing, they're different organizations that kind of give out advice on what's in your best interest as far as parking. There's actually an international one there that's listed, but they look at things. Okay, so you're running a municipal parking system, so what should we do? We look at rate structure. So the on-street should be more than off-street, as I said before. It must be enough to control the curb. So obviously, if we're charging 1 penny a minute or a penny an hour, that's not going to be enough to control the curb, because I'll give them $1 and I'll park there for 10 hours, no big, or 100 hours, so no big deal. So it's the rate has got to be something that does promote that turnover and encourages that. Should be comparable to similar municipalities. So anytime we go to look at rate structures and that kind of stuff, we look at, well, what are our neighbors doing? What are similar services, similarly positioned municipalities doing? We might not compare to a municipality in the middle of Nebraska, but we sure do other beach communities up and down the coast of Florida. That's where we should look. How are they doing it? What are they doing? And that was done, and we do that. And I know that it's, sometimes that's not popular because we don't want to pay for parking if we can avoid it, but it's necessary evil, maybe, would be the way to put it. And it can vary throughout the system, and we see that here, right? I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but the parking on the beach is certainly a lot more in demand and desirable right now than the parking downtown. So our rates are different. Parking down on the beach, it's a lot cheaper to park downtown for that reason. It doesn't justify that the higher rates downtown aren't currently justified. So getting back to enforcement a little bit, we look at our system as far as, I have a minimal number of staff, enforcement staff, where there's a whole bunch of, I don't want to get off on a big tangent here, but there's a bunch of details in parking. So enforcement is one part of it, but as it applies to enforcement, I don't have enough I'm not running a small police department. We're not 24/7 and that type of thing. We're focusing on when the parking is a problem, when it's the biggest issue. Not that you can't have an issue at 3 o'clock in the morning, but the police can issue parking citations and address those. But we're looking to focus on when the people are here. So we are 7 days a week. Our meters start at 6 o'clock in the morning. They go at 11 o'clock at night. So we're trying to schedule our folks in those times. We're balancing the staffing levels with enforcement demands. One of the things that we noticed is we just did a study. We looked at, well, when is the beach the busiest? And we found, not surprising, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a little bit surprising, Monday. Those are our 4 busiest days on the beach. People taking long weekends, I would imagine, something like that. So obviously we should schedule our people more on those days rather than the other days, I think, to kind of address that. We want them to be out there to kind of be that real and visible deterrent, because it's first of all, it's getting compliance without even issuing a ticket. If they see a parking enforcement vehicle drive by, I better pay for my meter or pay for my parking, because if I don't, I'm going to end up getting a ticket. But it also helps too, as far as, sorry, but it also helps too as far as they feel a little bit more comfortable because, okay, well, at least somebody's going through this lot on a somewhat frequent basis. So the other thing that we've done here, and I was really happy to see this, excuse me, when I came to Clearwater, how we're taking advantage of technology. They were doing some things, and I know there's been a revolving door at my position, but it seemed like they were all kind of moving towards best practices and really getting up there with technology. So we have license plate reader technology, and that's cameras that are located on cars, so they can read the license plates, and basically it's pretty cool technology, but it's really kind of simple in its root form. It's just comparing that license plate that it reads, that's ABC 123, to a list that's in the back office, in the software. So those lists are people that paid at the pay stations. They entered their license plate, so if you drive down the street at the speed limit and click off those plates and go, okay, this one paid, this one paid, this one paid, that one didn't pay, and then the enforcement person knows to issue a citation. So this increases efficiency greatly, and we're seeing a real need for that. Again, I do have a minimal staff, and there's a lot of, between the beach and the downtown, there's a lot of ground to cover, parking lots and that kind of stuff. So this really helps us with that. It also allows for virtual permits. You can probably all remember, and maybe some of you still have, the old hang tags or some kind of permit that we used to issue that you'd put in your car or hang somewhere. But then inevitably we dealt with I lost it, I misplaced it, I took my other car today, it was in my car, I forgot to hang it, all those kind of problems. So now your license plate is your permit. So when you contract with us to get a permit, or when the city employees get a permit for like the MSB garage, they just give us their license plate, it goes in the system, the license plate reader knows it as it drives through there. Okay, they're good. Oh, no, that was not, that one needs a citation. It also eliminates the need for pay and display. Pay and display was a technology that was pretty big for a little while, and a lot of people were using it. But the problem with that, you had a bunch of people complaining, well, now I'm walking further. Because, I used to, before it was just the single-headed meters at every parking space, cluttering up the streetscape and that kind of stuff, and they could go and pay right in front of their car. They went to the pay and display where they put, and this still is kind of the industry standard, is to have more of a multi-space pay station located throughout that can replace up to 10, or depending on how they're situated, or 10 or more single-space meters. So again, it shrinks down the number of devices that you have to deal with and maintain and that kind of stuff. But with pay and display, people were upset because, well, I got to walk all the way down, halfway down the block, pay that thing, and bring my ticket halfway back and put it on my dashboard, and that's just inefficient and blah, blah. Well, license plate reader technology takes care of that. You enter it into the machine, you pay for your time, and you don't have to go back to your car. We've also done, the City of Clearwater's gone to a mobile app. Hopefully most of you are familiar with this, but that was a great technology. That was a great inroad into making things more convenient, because you don't even have to go to the pay station now. You can just get out of your car and start walking towards your destination and put in your app where you are and pay for time. Beautiful thing about that is, in the old days when you had either the single space or even the pay and display, if you wanted to add time, you had to go back to the source, back to the meter. Now you can just do it on your cell phone, and it'll send you a text message before it runs out to let you know, hey, you're getting ready to run out of time. So if your meeting went long or whatever, you can add time. So there really is, the technology is trying to address a lot of the needs of citizens, but the citizens' needs are so broad and so varied that sometimes we can't cover them all, but there are some things that are happening that are making things easier for them. So as I talk, I got a little ahead of myself. It's a multi-space pay stations eliminate the need for multiple meters. And as I was saying, that the reason for that is there's one device instead of 10, because those single-space meters, they're like little computers. So that's 10 little computers that can break down and have to be maintained, versus now we have one, and 10 different locations that have to be collected, the labor to do that and that kind of stuff. Well, now it's down to one. But another trend we're seeing in the industry is we're going more towards, it used to be a cash, lots of coins. We'd get literally hundreds of pounds of coins at a time. Well, now most people are using credit cards, paying that way. So that's kind of another change that's happened. So as we look at the two different systems that we have here in Clearwater, we see obviously the beach. There's 450 on-street spaces. Those are at $3.50 an hour. So this is our metered parking on-street. There's 1,562 off-street spaces. Those are our lots and our garages that are over there. Those are at $3 an hour. You notice there's an asterisk there. The beach marina, that's kind of a little standout right now. There was really a desire to have that be just for the businesses that are there. And it's been difficult separating the two, so that, because a lot of people that, especially when the other lots are full, it's very enticing for somebody to park in that parking lot and just walk to the beach, which upsets the businesses that are there. They've come up with a system where they get a code, the businesses get a code that changes every couple of months, 3 months, 2-3 months, it changes. So you have to go to the business and get the code to put it in. It's not an ideal system. It's a little cumbersome. Something we got to work on as we go ahead. But then they get cheaper parking to park there, and the idea was that they're using that just for the businesses. So that is a little bit of an outlier. That is something as we go forward we're going to have to look at and address. I don't know enough about it now to sit here and give you well, this is what we need to do. I'm not prepared to say that yet, but it is an outlier, and it's a little bit weird. But we see on the beach, obviously, there's very high demands. Limited space for additional parking. We're not making any more streets over there, so we're not going to see any significant on-street parking being added to that area. And we got to address the conflicting needs. The residents want one thing, the tourists want one thing, the business owners want something else, and the employees want a fourth thing. So we can't make everybody happy sometimes. I mean, and what I wanted to talk about here when I got to this is just, I mean, if any of you ever worked in business or for businesses and that kind of stuff, typically we have our employee parking is somewhere in the back, further away from the front door, that type of thing. The boss might impose that if it's a private lot or something like that. Employees park over there out of the way so the customers have a thing. Same thing for municipal parking. So, the business owners and employees, if they want to seek reduced rate parking permits for over at the beach, maybe we should. Well, you're going to have to go towards all the lots that are further away from the businesses. Now that can create, I want to be right there. I run stuff back and forth. I do supply runs for my business and that kind of stuff. But that's going to have to be answered at some point. So any parking system, we should be uniform, equitable, and easy to understand. So we're working on the easy to understand. I know the big thing that we have now is a lot of folks, older folks, they tend to be reluctant to the apps and that type of thing. And I get that, but with the rate things are and that kind of stuff, who carries around $3.50 worth of quarters in their pocket to pay a meter? Nobody, I don't think, anymore. We can't get change anymore, right? There's still a change shortage or something. So we're trying to make it as easy to understand as we possibly can, but we really look to do it uniformly and equitably. So if there's something imposed on this side of town, it should be, the beach in the downtown is different, but on the beach, the north side versus the south side, if we're doing something for the businesses on the north side, and this kind of gets into the last bullet there, if we're doing something for the business on the south side of the beach, we need to do something similar, or if we took something away from them on the north side, we need to take it away from them on the south side as well. And how do we manage expectations when everybody wants that prime space? Everybody wants to be right up front, closest to the beach or closest to that business and that kind of stuff. So we've got to kind of push that on, let our employees and business owners know, really, we want to focus that for the tourists and the people that are going to frequent the businesses and the people that are supporting that system financially. That the prime parking should be for them. Because if you make exceptions, it's really important that you be consistent. So we try very, very hard not to because somebody will always call us and they have, well, I have this need, I need to be there because A, B, and C, it's more convenient. I'm afraid at night, my business doesn't close until after dark, and I'm afraid to walk and that kind of stuff. Well, if you make that consideration or that change for them, it's got to be open to everybody. You can't just do it for one and not others, without opening yourselves up to allegations of favoritism and all that kind of stuff. So the downtown considerations, how the downtown is different. There's 292 on-street spaces. Those are up to 50 cents an hour. There's 835 off-street spaces in our lots and garages. Those are 50 cents an hour. And you can see that there's not that parity that we look for. They're the same price. Ideally, we'd like to see a difference in there to incentivize, again, those people that would park on-street, to incentivize them to park off-street if they're going to be there for a longer period of time. Principal stakeholders here being the business owners, employees, and residents. Right now, in the age of COVID, we don't see a huge tourist draw to downtown. I know that there's some things in the works that are trying to change that, and I hope that that's successful. But as we stand here today, it's not. So the demand for downtown is not nearly what it is on the beach. We all know that. It's been greatly impacted by the pandemic, and I know that you guys are working with the downtown businesses to try to alleviate some of their problems and their concerns, and it's tough. But it's tough everywhere. It's not like just Clearwater. We have regular meetings with the other local parking managers, and they're all having the same thing. Our downtowns are hurting. Our downtowns are struggling. It's across the board. It's this rotten pandemic. But hopefully we will return back to a semblance of normal here sooner rather than later, Lord willing. And then, what impact will these projects that we're working on have? What will Imagine Clearwater do to that area? I mean, we're hoping it's going to be successful. We're hoping it's going to bring all those people. We need to be prepared for it as well. What will other future development bring? Hopefully Imagine Clearwater spurns more people to come in and invest and build infrastructure and businesses and the like. Because then we can look, how do we incentivize increased foot traffic? The one way, the park is just a small part of it, but the one way we do is that's one of the biggest reasons that the price is not the same downtown as it is at the beach. Because then it could really be, if we're charging $3.50 on Cleveland Street, that would be a disincentive to come downtown. It's not justified. It's just the numbers aren't there to support it. Hopefully that changes, and if at some point downtown is as busy or as much of a draw as the beach is, and then I'll be back to talk to you about a price increase at that point. But right now, it just doesn't justify going up that drastically. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the prices downtown here in a minute. So at the very least, what we're looking for downtown is a revenue neutral system. We still have the need to create turnover, even though it's not that busy. We still want to create turnover. We don't want the business, an employee or whatnot, because they will park right in front of the business, the cashier or whatnot, making just a little bit over minimum wage. They don't want to pay for parking because it cuts significantly into their paycheck. But at the same time, they're human, so they'll try to park as close as they possibly can, and if they can get away with it. So we need to still have something in place to incentivize that turnover. So we look at going forward, our single-space meters that are currently on this side of town, they've all been replaced on the beach. They're all multi-space pay stations over there. We still have single-space meters on this side of town, but they're at end of life. They don't do all the functions that they used to once do, and it's time to replace them. The single-space, the multi-space pay stations to replace them with are kind of expensive. And because we don't have the crowd to support it, we look at other ways to go about, and I was hoping this would show up a little bit bigger, but so one of the things that we're looking at here and we'd like to propose, or we'd like to go ahead with, is a system like this. So this is downtown. I got two different zones highlighted here. Some are in pink and some are in blue. The pink zones are kind of that central core right along Cleveland Street, and kind of a block or half a block going either way, north and south from there. And those areas, they're still somewhat of a draw. We'd like to get two things. First of all, to kind of get that parity that I talked about before, whereas your on-street should be more than your off-street. Our off-street, our lots and stuff like that are 50 cents an hour. It really should be $1 an hour in those particular areas. So we make it $1 an hour where it's highlighted in pink. We'd get rid of the meters, the old outdated meters that are currently there, and we would go to a supported mostly from the app, the Park mobile app. So if you were parking in there, it would be $1 per hour for a limited number of hours, and you'd have to pay through the Park mobile app. So kind of a give back on that then is the areas that are there in blue, we would change those to just timed parking. So you could park there for free for up to 2 hours. So anybody that, well, I want to go downtown, but I don't want to pay. Well, if there's spaces available in the blue area, park in the blue area. You can be there for up to 2 hours, and it's free. That should be enough time for you to go to lunch or frequent whatever business you need to frequent, do your business, and then leave. If you want to park longer, you should go to the garage. Pay 50 cents an hour. It's cheaper than the pink. And so it all kind of works together in a system like that. So we'll talk about our revenues for last year, or for the last 3 years. I have them here. And you can see the top row across is parking citation revenue. And we kind of count that separately because, well, I'll show you in a minute why. But you can see that in 2019, when everybody was having a banner year and things were going gangbusters, lots of people were coming, we were writing lots of parking tickets. There will be always a fraction of the public that comes that, more people parking, and a fraction of those will park incorrectly and get parking tickets. That's just human nature. That's how it works. So we see that 2019 was the best year. Obviously, COVID, this past year, the number of tickets fell drastically. Number of citations, I keep calling them tickets, sorry. Semantics, I guess. But it's dropped drastically in 2000 and this past year. That's all COVID related. For a little while, our staffs were furloughed. They weren't even working. So no tickets were being issued for a couple weeks, couple months.
We had minimal staff doing safety and handicap violations only during COVID when we were furloughed.
So then we look at the next is the downtown revenue, the row in the middle there, and that is a little bit deceptive if you look at it. So 2018, 2019 was an increase. We were doing really well, and it looks like, holy cow, something crazy happened, and you had a banner year. It's a little deceiving because we took over this year the Seminole Boat Ramp, and as everybody knows, the beach was a huge draw, and the boat ramps were a huge draw because those things weren't closed down because of COVID. So those were mobbed. So we made over $200,000 just from the Seminole Boat Ramp that we didn't make in the years prior. So you take the $200,000 away that we made in Seminole Boat Ramp, and you see we only, it was the lowest year. This past year was the lowest year downtown, and that's, you guys know that. There's nobody who's going downtown. The last one looks at the beach revenue, and again, these revenues, the downtown revenue, the beach revenue, this is both the meter parking, the garage parking, and permit parking. We do track it separately from downtown to beach, but you can see here that the beach is what saves my budget anyway. If not for the beach, I would probably be in a lot more trouble. But we were able to have, stay on budget this past year because the beach is so popular, because so many people are going to the beach and they're, paying for their parking. So you can see, by far, our money is coming from the beach. So where does it go then? So again, we keep the citation revenues separate from all the others, and here's why. Because out of the citation revenue, we're required to make some expenditures. So $5 for every paid citation goes to the general fund, and that covers crossing guards. So in 2019, we paid $156,000. I don't know why it's not they're kind of rounded to a little bit, that's why it's, but $156,000 for the general fund for the crossing guards. We have to pay anyone that wishes to contest or appeal a parking citation. We have to pay the courts $10. Whether we win or we lose, we pay them $10. And that was only 10. That's not a significant number, but that money does come out of those citations, as well as other enforcement expenses. So that's our people, our equipment, our supplies for enforcement that's at $694,000 that's there. Anything that's left over, so our citation revenue in 2019 was really close to $1 million. So you take all these things out, what's left over was $197,000. That money does not stay in my budget. That money then goes to the general fund, gets spent, I don't know, not my money at that point. But it's used for other things, of course, but the thing that I wanted to make clear here, I'm not really incentivized to just go out and hammer the heck out of people with parking citations. It doesn't affect my bottom line. It doesn't affect my budget. I don't make more money in my budget, so we can't go out and buy new cool parking things and put spinners on the enforcement vehicles or anything like that. We're just it's not there. So any money that's made over on parking citation goes to the general fund. It's not in the parking system's budget. So the beach and the downtown revenue, that does get combined. That's kind of one bucket, if you will. But out of that, in 2019, we paid $312,000 to fund the Jolly Trolley. The beach guards, we paid $1 million for the beach guards. Now that's everything. That's their salaries, their uniforms, the maintenance of their lifeguard stations, and anything like beach guard related. We funded out of the parking revenues. We paid $22,000 to the Sunsets at Pier 60 so that they can host that program. And then another $877,000 was, it's kind of all lumped together in the budget, but it's the biggest part of that is the beach cleaning. But then there's also for the traffic bureau signage that we would need. We pay for signs, the cleaning of the lots, the sweeping of the lots, the striping of the parking spaces, that type of thing. That's the kind of stuff that $877,000 contributed to. So other stuff coming out of that revenue from beach and downtown revenues, the parking revenues. I had a hard time with this one. Somebody said, well, it's a pilot. And I thought it was a pilot program and that kind of stuff, so I was struggling. 5.5% of your revenue goes to the pilot. Found out it's payment in lieu of taxes. It was an acronym. So it's in the budget, 5.5% into the general fund for this payment in lieu of taxes to be utilized elsewhere by other city agencies to pay for, and again, at that point it's no longer mine, so I don't know exactly what that pays.
So for those at home, the parking is an enterprise fund, and all of our enterprise funds pay a pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes, like a regular business would pay to the city. Go ahead.
Right. Personnel is obviously the biggest one. That's all the salaries, benefits, and that kind of stuff for everybody working in the parking system. That was $2.1 million. Capital improvements in 2019, we paid $400,000 for those. Operational contracting expenses, we have a contract with the multi-space pay station company. There's a contract with them. The Park Mobile, the mobile app, there's a contract with them. There's a contract with the company that facilitates our handheld devices that issue the tickets and that kind of stuff, and they take care of ticket payments and that kind of stuff. It's through that system. So that's where that $500,000 goes to fund all of those. So looking ahead, this is, and again, I've only been here 6 weeks, so some of this stuff is in its infant stages as far as what we're looking to do and that kind of stuff. But as I discussed earlier with those blue and those pink zones, implement a Park Mobile and time zones downtown. Constantly looking at what our rate structure should look like. Again, downtown is not justified to be what the beach is, but we'll look at that and constantly go that. What we're shooting for there is that balance, right? What controls the curb? What's the rate at which we get that turnover, we get that compliance that we need, but it's still affordability? Because no matter what, if we're gonna have turnover, we're still gonna have to fund something. We're gonna have to fund enforcement, we're gonna have to fund, signage, whatever that's on the street. So, that there needs to be a give and a take there. Any downtown parking system should be part of a successful traffic management plan. Again, we're just a small piece of that puzzle, but it certainly, as we go forward with these different projects and that kind of stuff, how are people going to come into downtown? Where are they going to park? How are we going to direct them to park? We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides, but all that stuff goes into it. And we're small, but we're kind of integral, because again, if the people come here and they can't find a parking space, then it can hurt businesses and that kind of stuff if there's no place for people to park, or even the perception that there's no place to park. Even if there is and they can't find it, then their perception is, oh, I'm not going down to Clearwater again anymore because I can never find a place to park. So it is in the works. There's plans. There's going to be a new garage downtown. Currently, the plan is to put it at Fort Harrison and Park Street as a component of the new City Hall complex. So, what will that look like going forward? How will traffic be affected as people go in there? What will it just, will it be, how do we set up the rate structures and that kind of stuff for the folks that are coming there for Clearwater and the events? And we hope it's full. We hope it's successful. And either way, we're going to be ready when the time comes to build that garage. So, an ongoing analysis of the constantly evolving area. Imagine Clearwater, the proposed Cleveland Street changes, whatever happens there, that you guys ultimately decide, we'll be ready to deal with it. If that parking goes away and it becomes a streetscape, or if you decide to do something a little bit different, we got to be ready to handle it no matter what. So there's a few things that are beach specific that I wanted to focus on for a couple minutes. On the beach end of it, looking ahead, one of the things that I need to do, or the parking system needs to do, is look for ways to increase the use of the North Beach Parking Plaza. Currently, we have a co-owner with that. They have the first 2 floors, and those are the floors that fill up first, right? I mean, it's just human nature. They go in, they want to park as soon as they can. So by the time, ours are the last floors to fill, so I want to look at ways to get more people over there, because if the first 2 floors fill up, our co-owner makes good money and we make nothing. So we don't make money until we start getting people in the 3rd floor and above. So one of the things, that little sign that's there, when people drive over the causeway and they go through the circle and they get to the beach, the lot that they want to park at, and we had signs that just said, "Lot's full." Sorry. So I had to make some signs like this. Yeah, this lot's full, but hey, listen, 490 Poinsettia Avenue, go there. There should be parking. They can put it in their GPS then and have a direction and have know where they're going. And that way, it's kind of a traffic calming, if you will, because now instead of just hunting for a space, we're pointing them towards a space. The other thing that I'm considering is the pros and cons of, like I talked about before, is those beach employees. Yeah, they want the spaces up close and closer to where they are and that kind of stuff, but those are more in demand. What would it look like if we if you want discounted parking on the beach, you're going to have to park at the North Beach Parking Plaza. We'll give you a discounted rate because you're an employee, but that's where you're going to park. And that includes employees of the city. They're working over there too, and they have the same issues. So, got to deal with HR then at that point, possibly the union, and that type of stuff. But it will make some people upset that they're going to have to park further away from. If I was to go to a system like that or recommend a system like that, some people will be upset because, well, now I got to walk 1.5 blocks or 2 blocks, and some days it rains, and some days it's hot as heck, and that type of thing. So. The beach marina is a big one. It's been proposed to build a garage over on the beach marina lot. Currently, there's 300 and some spaces on that marina parking area. If we did look for, there's certainly demand there. The lot is pretty full quite often. It has that quirky issue with the codes for the businesses and stuff currently. So if we built a bigger facility, you know, there's some different things that we could do. Some areas could be cordoned off for just monthly pass holders and that kind of stuff, possible. But that's a huge undertaking. I mean, we're looking to build this garage downtown in the next couple of years. You know, there's no money in my reserves at this point. I think are $14 million. I didn't say this. Let me go back for a minute. So the beach revenues, any money that's left over kind of goes in our reserves, and usually that's around $1.5 million a year, and that's held in an account for reserves, and that would be for building garages and large-scale projects in the future. So, but you can see the current industry standard, and this is a real rough go-by, $25,000 per space. So if you're building a parking garage, and that's just a plain Jane garage, if we build a garage over at the marina, it probably needs to be something a little bit over and above. That area calls for something a little bit better than a plain Jane. It's got to look nice. It's got to fit the area. So, you know, if we want to build a 500 space garage, my reserves are gone on one garage. So, and I don't really currently at this point have enough for 2 garages, one there, one here. But I mean that money would have to be found elsewhere if that's the way that we're going to go. You know, how big does it need to be? What's the footprint of it need to be? All those kind of things. And that's the stuff where we kind of lean on a consulting firm to come in and do a study and tell us that. I did see there was just some very, very rudimentary stuff done where they kind of just put a picture of a garage on that area and this is what it could look like, but there really wasn't a lot of data behind that and that type of stuff. But those questions would have to be answered. Well, how big do you want it? You know, how many people do you want to service? The other thing when we go to do that, where do the 350 some odd parking spaces that are currently there that are going to be built on, where do we put those people? Usually a displacement plan, what it looks like for a project like that, and it'll take a good part of a year, a solid year to build that. So where do we put those 350 parkers for a year while we're building this garage? Usually those look like we find some lot elsewhere, and unfortunately there's really not a lot of spaces on the beach, so we're talking about putting those spaces somewhere on the other side of the causeway and running a shuttle service, which adds to your cost of the project. Just again, this is stuff to consider, stuff to think about. So then this is like more of the system-wide stuff, so not beach specific or downtown specific, but looking at the as we go ahead, we're looking at proposed fine adjustments. Currently, the fine is disproportionate to parking fees. So, especially on the beach, if you park on the street and say, I'm just not even going to pay them for the metered space, I'm just going to park here and I'll get the ticket. The ticket is $15. So, if you stayed for more than 5 hours, you won, right? You paid $15 for parking that had to pay the thing. It would have been more expensive. So we'll put a proposal together for you and that kind of stuff. And at some point, we will be asking you to address those parking fees or the citation fees to kind of get that more in parity with something that makes sense and meets operational needs. Also looking at a comprehensive 10-year maintenance program for all of our garages. I'm working currently with Walker Consultants. It's one of our consultants of record. They're kind of a parking-centered firm. They do most of their work is in the parking industry. So they're going to evaluate our garages, look at them, and write out basically a roadmap on what we need to do maintenance-wise. You know, garages require maintenance just like any other structure or building or what have you, and our garages are no different. The industry go-by is currently, they recommend, you know, $50 per parking space get set aside per year to deal with those things. And some of the stuff is just normal. You're on your roof and other areas, it's generally an industry standard to put some kind of coating on that, water pervious coating. But the Florida sun beats it up, so, and they know every X number of years, we recommend that get replaced and that type of stuff. So that, as well as your expansion joints and that kind of stuff, we're in a salt air environment, that stuff just, it gets affected. They look at it, do some inspecting and that kind of stuff, spalling concrete, all that stuff but they'll put a plan together. We recommend for this garage to do this at year 1, this at year 3, this at year 5, and on down the line. So that we're working on that. Also looking at, and I've talked other, and this is not just the parking agency either. You know, again, we're a small part of it. We're working with other city agencies, a comprehensive signage project to identify all city parking facilities. The studies show that the public is generally, they feel a little bit better about parking in a public parking lot or garage. So I'd like to get our garages kind of all signed, branded, if you will, so that, you know, we Clearwater parking, that you know that that's that. And in working with the city was already working, other agencies in the city were already working on a wayfinding project that included some of the parking garages, but then just have this kind of supplement that or add to it or what have you, so that we can direct people into those parking areas. Improve traffic flow. It's better for the environment because you don't have those cars driving around aimlessly looking for hunting for parking spaces, as Dr. Shoup called it. And also, you know, traffic calming. It decreases driver anxiety because they know where they're going to go. And I want to just bring something up on this. As we were looking at this, we're like, wouldn't it be great if, as you're coming over the causeway, we had some signage there, some kind of interactive signage somewhere, that as you're coming across, you know, because we do have generic parking signs, this way, that way, South Beach parking, North Beach parking. But wouldn't it be great if we're thinking to ourselves, amongst our group, if you're coming over and it says, okay, so that South Beach parking is this way, but if it was interactive and there was a way to say, well, lots are full. So now you know, it doesn't even make sense for me to go that direction. I'm just going to turn right and go up and use the North Beach parking plaza or some of those lots. So I talked with some folks in the traffic bureau then, and one fellow that's been there for a very, very long time, he's like, you know, Clearwater had something like that back in the 70s. It was analog. It was a little flip-down thing. And he says, and we had that, and we were doing that, but some of the businesses came, and, you know, this is something you don't think about, right? Because I'm thinking, what's the downside? And he said, well, some of the businesses complained and said, well, if you had the sign that says the lots are closed, then they won't go that way. And so then the businesses would get upset because, well, the traffic's not going our direction, they're going the other direction. You know, what's the right way to go on a thing like that? I'd love feedback. I'd love to you know, hear what you guys think about something like that. Because, you know, are we to the point now where the environment and traffic calming is more important than you know, the perception that nobody will go down to that side of town? Well, they're not going to go there because it's already full. There's no sense to send them there anyway. It seems logical, but maybe I'm off base, and maybe some of you folks have had that experience or know about it or something, know more than what I was told. So the other thing that I want to look at as I continue with the city here is sustainability. We have a very anemic EV charging station program going on right now. I would love to see that throughout our parking system. Now, but there's always a catch, right? It's you know, it's not as simple as it would seem at first. What I found out as I looked into this is that Duke Energy was offering some type of incentive where you could get stuff for very reasonable prices and that kind of thing. But again, coming from up north, flooding and hurricanes was not something that we considered on a regular basis, but down here, it's got to be allotted for. So electricity and water don't mix. So putting EV charging stations in a parking lot next to the beach is a problem, because of potential flooding and that kind of stuff. So Duke didn't want to go down that road. It became too cumbersome of a project and too pricey to overcome the regulations that are in place because of flooding. So, I mean, somebody's going to have to figure it out someday. And as we go forward, that's something I'm going to try to stay on top of as we get it figured out. Because the other thing I would love to, as our vehicles age out, our enforcement vehicles, switch them over to an electric or at least a hybrid type of a vehicle. Some of the considerations that I have to take is we're running those license plate readers in there, which are electric. So they're taking some of the juice from the battery as it is, and obviously it being as hot Florida weather and that kind of stuff, they need to have some kind of air conditioning. You know, running those compressors is going to also take some electricity. So I need to have a vehicle that can run for 8 hours for a shift, because I certainly don't want my staff, 2 hours left in their shift and having to send a tow truck because they ran out of juice on Mandalay Avenue. But the other thing I'd like to look at is retrofitting the lighting system. Some of it's already been done. Some of our facilities already have some LED lighting fixtures and that kind of stuff. But this would be another thing that Walker Consultants would look at as they're evaluating our garages and make those recommendations to switch over to energy efficient LED fixtures where possible, wherever possible. Those things usually pay for themselves within a couple of years, depending. So that's something I'd like to do. Also look at, as far as sustainability, the benefits from solar energy. Now I really don't, this is another big question mark. I know a lot of garage facilities are looking to put solar panels on top of their roofs and stuff like that for energy. But again, I don't know how those stack up to hurricane ratings and that kind of stuff. You certainly don't want solar panels flying around during a windstorm. So there are some considerations that I don't have enough information at this point to say, like, oh yeah, we'll be able to do it. I'd love to do it. I'm going to look into it. But there's those building codes and that kind of stuff that could become problematic. So stuff council specific that I'll be looking for as we move forward here. The ordinance amendments. I already talked about the change for the fine increase. That we'll be bringing that to you at some point. But we'd also like to codify some existing procedures in ordinance. There's some things that we're kind of writing tickets for citations for under a catch-all that's in the ordinance. But we think it might be better if they had a specific ordinance themselves. For things like back-in parking, parking against traffic, parking a non-EV vehicle in an EV space, that type of thing. It would be better if there was actually a hard ordinance that mentioned that stuff instead of just doing the catch-all ordinance that we currently are doing. We'd like to also update the language to cover, a lot of the ordinance is talking about single-space meters, parking meters. So just add some terminology in there to change the meter to reflect the multi-space pay stations that we're currently using. And that concludes. I hope I didn't go too long. I'm sorry if I did, but I'd be happy to answer every question that I possibly can.
Well, I wanted to have this discussion because parking obviously is a big deal in Clearwater, especially on the beach. People have questions about our rates, how those are determined. Some people think they're too high. I want everyone to understand how many things the parking fund actually pays for, from the beach guards to crossing guards to the cleanup of the beach, which really goes to the quality of the destination. So I think that's important, and I didn't know if all of the council knew about everything within the parking system, and that's why I wanted Mr. Horn to do this. I've got a number of questions, but I'll open it up to the council first, and we'll go from there. Questions? Councilmember Hamilton?
I'm probably the one to, I'll just bite my tongue because I'm probably more familiar with the parking system and public parking than anybody else up here. But I think there's also some upcoming conflicts because we've got, when we redo the streetscape along Cleveland going out towards 5 Points, one of the planned things, and we've already had our first experience with it, is the new diagonal back-end parking. We've had some experiences with that at Crest Lake, but if we're using license plate readers, back-end parking eliminates the efficiency of the license plate reader. Somebody's got to get out of their car and walk down the sidewalk side to read the license plates. So there's a conflict in what we're planning on doing and what we're, and we're moving towards license plate readers in one department, and in another area, we're moving towards a parking system that makes those inoperable. So it's kind of, where's our, what do we prefer? Parking garages, we could use another parking garage on the beach. Problem is, everybody wants to park, and Jeremy, I've been here my whole life, and my family's business has been out there for almost over 55 years. When that traffic backs up on the causeway, everybody in line going out there knows where that one space is that nobody else knows about. That's why they're willing to sit in that traffic to get there. And, but we could use another garage, but it needs to be located where people are going to utilize it. They want the parking where they don't have to walk a block and a half or 2 blocks from the beach to the beach, if they're going to be, especially if they've got in the back of their car a cooler and an umbrella and some chairs and things of that nature. So, and there's no land on the beach this city can afford to buy, to build parking. We've got to build it on land we already own, period. So you now have Pier 60, the marina, and you have the picture you've got right up there right now. The land basically at the bottom of the picture, which is right near Mandalay, on Mandalay basically, there's an opportunity to build a garage there. Now you build a garage there, and I've always hesitated to bring this up because for me to speak about it, people say, oh, well, he just wants a parking garage there because his family's business is right there in the other part of the picture. But bottom line is our business is serving as many people as we can serve in the facility we have. So more parking right there isn't going to bring me more customers. So it's not for me. It's for the people that want to go to the beach, and a parking facility here. People don't have to cross a street to get their feet in the sand. They don't have to do any of that. So it makes sense. And then you're going to have some people that say, well, you're going to block my view of the beach from Mandalay. I challenge you to tell me how much of the beach you can see from Mandalay in this location, number one. And number two, what is our priority? We want people to be able to drive and see the beach, or do we want people to be able to park and put their toes in the sand? So, going forward, we all need to keep that in mind. I hear in my business, my family business, we hear constantly how expensive the parking is out on the beach. What we need to make sure we are, and as part of your presentation said, we need to be competitive with the parking rates in other municipalities that we're competing against. I haven't seen a recent survey of what those parking rates are in the other municipalities, and I would be interested to see that. And I'm going to stop right there and let somebody else talk.
Well, we've talked about a parking garage at Mandalay and got a lot of feedback. Also down on South Beach by Opal Sands is another location that we talked about, but got a lot of negative feedback for blocking potentially the views. So that's another discussion. Other questions? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I wanted to tell you that was a great presentation for being here 6 weeks.
Thank you, sir.
You did a great job on that, Jeremy, and welcome aboard. One of my questions is street parking on the beach. A lot of the businesses there, I've noticed for years, especially restaurants, have asked me about some kind of valet service, if that would be something the city would want to look at. And I'm not saying the city pay for it. It could be something that maybe the businesses would go in on, but I always thought that the North Beach Garage would be a great place for the city to. I hate to see a bunch of separate valet services, but the city could negotiate with one service for the beach, and then figure. I don't want to get in the middle of how they figure that out, but would that be something that you'd be would like to talk about?
So at my last job, well, when I started there, we had a valet service. They do bring challenges. They can be beneficial. Ultimately, by the end of my tenure there, it just wasn't paying for itself, so we got away from it. I think I would like to, if we want to go down that road and explore it, we can certainly study it. But I think it might be better to try to farm that out to a private company to run it, contract with a private contractor to run it, because then hiring more staff to facilitate it and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's where we really ran into the problems, paying our, people to valets run till late hours and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, we could definitely explore whether that would be a beneficial thing here to the city of Clearwater.
Okay.
Councilmember Beckman?
I have a question. Why do we earmark parking funds for specific things like the Jolly Trolley, beach guards, sunsets? Why does it get earmarked that way?
I really don't know that I can speak intelligently on that. All that stuff happened before I got here, so.
Mr. Horn?
You really should, I guess we could tell you a story about Clearwater budgets over a 20-year period. And there was a time, well, there's always a time that council members don't want to raise the millage to cover general fund expenses. So we did go through a period of time before the recession where we had to find a way to balance the budget. Mm-hmm. One of the ways we balanced the budget is through the revenue in the parking fund because it was not restricted. And so that was one way of avoiding raising the millage on our residents to cover expenses that we felt were absolutely critical to what the mayor talked about, again, the tourism brand, keeping the beaches clean, mm-hmm. making sure we have lifeguards. So that's why we do that. That's why it's
Earmarked that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the parking was like a user fund.
Yeah.
For those who use the beach, they were generating the revenue that then was making the destination
Right.
that much better.
Yeah.
So it made sense from that standpoint, because you'll talk to some people in Clearwater and they say, I don't go to the beach, it's too busy, or
Right.
whatever reason, they don't care for sand, whatever the reason may be. So rather than putting it on the citizens' backs, this was a very logical place to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there are a couple things. You didn't address at all some of the parking issues on North Beach with the residential section, where people have issues with people parking on their yards or close to their yards and accessing the beach. Is that going to be addressed, or?
So I try to do a very overarching presentation without going into a bunch of the little things. There are a whole bunch of little minutia that goes into it and that kind of stuff. This definitely being an issue. To a point, there's things that can be done. Some of it would require some consensus from the part of the residents that live in those areas. Mm-hmm. Usually how that's addressed in the industry is they form like a residential zone. Mm-hmm. So then the people that could park in there would be the people in that zone. They would get permits for their vehicles and they'd be the only ones that were allowed to park in there. We would sign it as such and that kind of thing. But from my understanding, we really don't have a consensus among those. So at that point, then our parking system is getting in the middle of a neighborhood dispute. And we tend to shy away from those unless we have, a significant, and I don't know enough about, I haven't spoken, so I'm just talking, overall, I'm not talking specifically about the issue that you're asking me about, but.
Jeremy, I think the chief could probably talk to that. He gets a lot from his officers getting complaints about the residential area.
Dan Slaughter, Chief of Police. Jeremy actually doing a pretty good job answering it. It has been an issue with consensus among the neighborhoods. We do have the public access points that are up there that kind of drive some traffic going there. And we've always had this difficult balance of the residents want to use it for the purpose of whether it's guests or for their own particular use, but then so we can't just do a no parking zone. The only parking tickets the police department really writes are your no parking zones and your handicap violations. We don't deal with the meters. That is by far the citations that we write the most are the ones on North Beach in those residential communities in those zones. But it's definitely been a challenge, and we definitely would want to be in favor of trying to drive people to the more efficient public parking spaces. So there's been back and forth through signage over the course of the year and discussion about residential permits, and as Jeremy stated, there hasn't really been a consensus on that from the residents. Sir, good.
Thanks, Chief.
And then do you have information on, so there are discount stickers or tags that residents who might not, who don't live on, so Clearwater residents can use to park in lots on the beach? Are those usually utilized to the maximum?
So what we have, and I think this is when you're talking about.
The annual pass.
The annual pass. And really what that was intended to do was to give people that don't, they live in Clearwater, they're residents of Clearwater, but not on the beach,
Right.
to give them access so that, they're living in Clearwater, paying taxes, and that kind of stuff, so they're citizens, so we want to give them an opportunity to have a
access.
cheaper way to get to the beach. It has, because of the demand that COVID's brought, perhaps because of the demand that the higher prices brought, we had only allocated 300 of those, and that was ample in the past.
They're sold out now.
What we're seeing now is we're sold out. So we're also seeing that a lot of, and I don't have the hard numbers, I haven't delved into it enough to really give you hard numbers, but there's a significant portion of people that actually live on the beach that have gotten those, not so that they can come to the beach and utilize the beach, but so that they have an extra parking space for their car. That's really not what it was intended for. It was intended for, somebody that lives, landlocked.
Yeah.
In to come and use the beach. So we're gonna have, that's gonna be an issue going forward. We're gonna have to address it, and and then we get into the, do we tell somebody that's purchased a permit for the last 5 years that, sorry, you can't, you live on the beach, so you can't get this permit? It, to be determined.
And then I guess I just have one other one. About how many city employees generally park on the beach, during the day? Because you said there are some.
So do you know how many employee permits we have?
I don't know the definite number, but I can tell you between marine and aviation parking, we have about 70 in the marine parking lot itself, so city employees alone. Plus the Clearwater Beach Rec Center, which parks a lot of the lifeguards, our parks and rec people working on the beach, the beach raking equipment. So there is a considerable amount.
So like over 100, probably,
I would think so.
ish?
I would guess, yes.
Okay.
And we can get that number for you.
I'm good.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Councilmember Bunker.
I have to agree, that was a great presentation. Thanks
Thanks,
so
sir.
much. I appreciate the fact that you brought up sustainability and went into a lot of detail about wanting to get this worked into our system. I was curious, was most of the feedback we got from people on the beach negative toward parking structures?
Anytime that they were right on the sand, the feedback was very negative.
Because it seems that we need more parking spaces down there. And a parking structure seems like the only logical choice. I like the idea of the sign that says, no parking on this side, and I can understand the business being upset by that. But if there was a parking structure that could handle the cars that are coming there, we wouldn't have the nonstop traffic jams that we have getting to the beach, would we?
Well,
We always would to an extent because
To an
the roads are in fact part of the issue. You've only got so large a tube, a pipe, that we can push traffic through.
Yeah.
Certainly it helps that there's a destination for those cars to end up at, but we're gonna have a presentation in a few minutes about gondolas, and the reason is because the real limitation is the causeway.
I used to live on North Beach myself when I first moved here. And yeah, there was traffic. I don't think it was anywhere near as bad as it is now.
If you were here back when the old bridge was here, and it ran right down Cleveland Street, it was far worse back then.
Really?
And when the roundabout wasn't there, which a lot of people hate, but it was much worse prior to that too. Traffic used to back all the way up to Keene and even Belcher. So,
And one last thing, I would just want to, on your sustainability slide, you know, there are EV charging stations right on the beach. So we have Sherry Heilman's Beachcomber has a charging station, Indian Rocks Beach has charging stations, that, you know, St. Pete Pier now has there are charging stations in St. Pete right next to the water. So, you know, that's a positive thing that's happening. And then, you know, as far as retrofitting LED fixtures, every day that we don't have LED light bulbs in, we're losing money. So that should be done, like whether or not a light bulb is out or not, I believe. And then one last thing about, you know, the phrasing here, would any of our facilities benefit from solar energy? All of our facilities will benefit from solar energy. It's just whether or not we want to take that step and save money. So just wanted to make those points.
Jeremy, when was that study done on demand? Is that just internal? You said the majority of demand is Monday or Friday through Monday?
Yes.
Was that internal?
Yes, it was. But I can certainly get you those numbers.
It was not a formal outside study, though?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. You mentioned business should park in the back and our employees. That is not the case at the Garden Street Garage. All of the employees park at the very front. All of the parking system, I've always gotten questions about that from people that utilize that garage. Staying on that garage, we're going through a major reconstruction, and do you think that garage should have ever gotten to the shape it is in?
So that happened before I got here.
I know that. That's why you can answer honestly. It's not your problem.
I guess the most honest way to answer that question, I've certainly seen worse. I mean, I don't know. A lot of that looks like it's the superficial structure. It's not like foundational. Where I just came from, they're actually at the point now where they think they have to rip down the whole garage because of neglect over the years. So it's in a harsh environment. It was looked at just a couple years ago. There was a study done that they identified these issues and what has to be done. But when you get into them, like anything, you know, you think it's one problem and you tear out some sheetrock in your house and you find out, oh boy, I got a bigger problem than we thought we had. So it's really, really hard to say. I'm pleased it's not a cop-out. It's really hard to say without, you know, I wasn't there along the project.
I just don't want to defer maintenance.
No.
And I think we're doing a lot more work on that garage rather than had we not deferred maintenance. I've been in that garage for years. The ceiling in that garage on the third floor was collapsing in certain places, and there were cones there for 3 years.
Okay.
To me, that's too long. And so I know we've had 4 parking managers before you, but this is something I don't want to see anymore.
Well,
and I'm hoping you're going to address it.
And that's why I covered it in the slide. We have Walker coming in to kind of lay out that roadmap of where we need to go all along the way over the next 10 years. Now, that doesn't mean that something, you know, can't come back and bite us when we rip into those walls and find that, oh, we got, you know, termite damage that we didn't know about or something. Not on a metal structure, obviously, a concrete structure, but you know what I'm saying, the analogy that I'm making there. So, but yes.
Tara, do you want to add to that?
Tara Kivett, Engineering Director. We did do some inspections on both the MSB and the Garden Avenue Garage in 2012 and then again in 2018. And both of those time periods did result in some rehab work. So the 2018 inspection, unfortunately, it took till about 2020 to get all of that done. So ideally, moving forward, 6 years is too long, obviously, and so we're going to try to look at more every 2 to 3 years doing that. But the Garden Avenue Garage, this project now is around $700,000, and given the amount of work that we're doing and the age of the garage, it's really not that atypical of an investment for the age of the garage. But
Is that
noted-
same facade going to be replaced that we had on the front?
Yes, very similar.
Does that hide problems because there is a facade?
I think it wasn't built as it would now. This was the garage was constructed in '86, and so now there's a different design standard. But without, it would have been awfully complicated both on the design side and construction to completely redo that. So we're redoing it in materials that will last longer and will function better. And then obviously now it's on the radar moving forward to include that more in the inspection. Again, it was before my time when we were doing these inspections, so now we'll know what to look for.
Okay. So Jeremy, you're going to come back with a pricing study at some point in the near future?
Yes. Well, Walker is, what we're waiting for there, I'm sorry to drag this out, but we have 2 garages that we own outright, the Garden Avenue Garage, the MSB Garage, 2 that are co-owned. So I'm in the process now of working with the North Beach Parking Plaza, our partners at the North Beach Parking Plaza, as well as Station Square, to kind of get them on board. Because I honestly don't know, they have maintenance contracts with other companies, private companies, so checking to make sure that that's being done on there, or if I need to incorporate those in the overall study for our other garages. That's what I'm working on. That's where the project is right now. Once I get the answer to those questions, they'll either study the 2 garages or they'll study all 4 garages.
And then you'll come back with the downtown parking and potentially an
Right.
increase. Would that increase also increase Park Mobile's fee? Because right now I think it's 35 cents a transaction plus the 50 cents.
Right, and they're getting that, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about the garages. So
No,
you're
I'm
talking about
going back to downtown.
the fees downtown, okay. So yes, no, we will be coming to you with a price increase along with those zones that I pointed out, the blue and the pink, some being free for 2 hours, some being $1 an hour, moving up to $1 an hour. And the Park Mobile fees, it would not change. I mean, they're 35 cents if you pay $3.50 an hour on the beach, or if you pay 50 cents an hour here. That's throughout the system, and we wouldn't be changing that.
And then if you start to do the availability, if you do signage out on the beach, is that something that's going to come back to us? Because I think there is a discussion there. We used to, Pier 60, Hoyt will remember this, we probably still do it. We'll put up a barrier saying it's full. And then the emails start flowing in because people drive by and they count how many spaces they can see from the road that are empty. And so if we were using some signage that said there's no parking on South Beach or North Beach, TIA does it too. They have how many spaces they believe are available. Oftentimes, though, if you go on the floor, you will find spaces that are actually available. So if that's not real-time updating itself, in my opinion, you're causing more problems.
Sure.
And then the businesses are going to complain, and rightfully so.
Right. What we see there is it becomes difficult sometimes in a situation like that, in a high-demand lot or structure. If you try to do it, one person leaves, you let one person in, you always have the next people there queuing up. Okay, but there's one space available, so they come in, but now that 3 more people queue up right behind them, and sorry, we're only letting one in, and so then they got to turn around and that kind of stuff. So it's not uncommon, just as a traffic calming scheme, or to wait until there's a number of spaces, 10, 15, depending on the size of your facility, your lot, or whatnot. Wait until there's, and then open it up, let 15 cars in, and then shut it again. But we can do better.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilmember Beckman?
What are your thoughts? I mean, I ask you too, but what about the whole Dunedin issue with parking, where they put in those parking kiosks and there was a big uproar and they ended up covering them and then removing them? How does that compare with us downtown though? I mean, obviously, we're not gonna make everybody happy, right? And we don't have enough people downtown right now. And so, what lessons would we take away from what Dunedin went through?
Well, we're seeing right now that I guess we put, paid parking now in front of Frenchie's Cafe, and now I think we've taken it down.
Right, so what that was, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a point to this. There's actually a point. Go
Well,
ahead,
I
Mr.
mean,
Owen.
if we're talking about the same thing, is that we eliminated 1 hour free parking as part of parking systems staff trying to address some issues. That resulted in a phone call to me from a business owner pointing out the disruption and the difficulty that was causing there. And then I think you got a phone call from somebody complaining about it. And so what I did was I just simply called Jeremy and said, let's suspend any more changes until after we had this presentation. Because those are the kinds of issues that we're going to have to address.
But here's my point. My point is, people don't like change. And if they're accustomed to getting 1 hour free parking in front of Frenchie's Cafe, and we change it, it generates phone calls. That's what happened in Dunedin. They didn't have turnover, and we went through this back in the early 2000s. I mean, I've worked in downtown for 20 years, and I think I've told this story, at least you all have heard it. But we had assistants that back in the day, we had free parking downtown. And so they weren't parking in the parking garage that was dedicated for them because it was $27 a month. So they would park all day long in the free spots. Then we increased it to a dime. Well, a dime isn't enough. And so, but it was only for 1 hour. So every hour, all of the assistants were going down and putting a dime in. So they were losing about 10 minutes of productivity per hour so that they could get 80-cent parking per day, which was still cheaper than being in the garage. So then we raised the rate. That eliminated the problem. I mean, parking is really an example of unintended consequences. And I know you're trying to fix inequities all over the beach. I'd like to know, not today, we need to move on, but what all the inequities are that we're trying to eliminate so that we're at least aware of what we're going to get complaints about. Because again, what people have become accustomed to, they just like status quo. Whether it makes sense or not, whether it's equitable to the rest of the beach or not, they don't like change. It's
Mayor,
just human nature.
My intention is to discuss with you all of the inequities
Okay.
that we've discovered, and then see what's the best way to address it. The environment just doesn't accommodate all needs. It just doesn't. So the question is, where do you want to make exceptions?
All right, anything else? Jeremy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 3.2.
Approve Second Amendment between Pinellas County and the City of Clearwater for the joint partnership agreement with South Myrtle Avenue from Clearwater Logan Road to Bel Air Road Sanitary Sewer Project, extending the expiration date to November 2022 and increasing estimated costs by $39,631.50 from $170,593.50 to $210,225, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jeremy Brown. I'm the engineering manager for utilities. This item is simply to extend a previously approved joint project agreement, otherwise known as a JPA, between the city and Pinellas County. The county originally intended to begin construction in 2018. However, it's been delayed until the summer of 21 and with anticipated completion in February of 2022. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Beckman?
So this is a shared cost project?
The costs before you are the city's costs.
Okay, how come the county isn't paying any of that?
It's our infrastructure. So it's a stormwater project. They want to go put in new stormwater along the roads, and some of our infrastructure's in the way, and so we have to move it out of the way, basically.
Okay.
Consent?
Yes.
Thank you.
3.3.
Approve the request from City of Clearwater staff to vacate a drainage and utility easement described as that portion of Hart Street lying north of blocks 9 and 10 of Jones subdivision of Nicholson addition to Clearwater, blocks 7, 8, 9, 10, and 10, as recorded in Plat Book 4, page 82 of the public records of the Hillsborough County, of which Pinellas County was once part, less and except that portion lying 270.6 feet on the east line of Section 9, Township 29 South, Range 15 East, also less and except the railroad's rights-of-way as recorded in Official Records Book 6626, page 429 of the public records of Pinellas County, Florida, and pass the appropriate ordinance on first reading. Mr. Burzay.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Good morning. This easement is located entirely on city property and it isn't needed for municipal use. City staff recommend vacation of the easement. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right. 3.4.
Award a construction contract to TLC Diversified Inc. of Palmetto, Florida in the amount of $2,497,605 for the Marshall Street Water Reclamation Facility blending tank improvements per invitation to bid. Approve engineer of record supplemental 1 work order to Jones Edmonds and Associates in the amount of $326,634, increasing the work order total from $163,000 to $489,634, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brown again.
Thank you. Again, my name is Jeremy Brown. Excuse me, I'm the engineering manager for utilities. The structural supports, piping, and other key components of this Marshall Street sludge blending tank are in poor condition and reaching the end of their useful life. The purpose of this project is to perform the necessary repairs and improvements that will improve mixing and provide ease of equipment operation and maintenance. Happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Beckman.
Okay. Sludge blending tanks, right? And improved mixing sounds fun. Okay, so what I just noted here for my notes is that's a really big increase, and it seems frequently, you know, we're asked to approve these increases. And I understand that projects start and then we get into unknowns, but it seems that, you know, I'd just like to know statistically, and you wouldn't know this off the top of your head, how frequently are we asked to increase that budget, and how does it differ from the RFP that was, you know, the quote that was supplied? You know what I mean? I'm sure they have contingencies about, but if we find this, you know, this happens, and that seems reasonable, but how frequently does that happen?
It's a great question. I'm not sure I quite understand. The increase, are you referring to the construction costs or for adding more to the engineer to oversee the project?
From the 160, the increase of 163,000. So it goes from 326.
Yeah, that's for the engineer who oversees the project.
Okay.
A lot of that is just what I said, overseeing it. And so this is estimated to be about 300 days long. And so they're going to have somebody out there actually making sure the contractor does what they're supposed to do.
So why wasn't it part of the initial amount of 326?
Well, generally, at least utilities, we prefer not to do that because we really don't know how long the construction is going to be or even what it's going to entail until we're done with the design. And so historically, we've always gone through the design process, and then once we recognize, okay, this is what we're going to design, this is how long it's going to take, we bring the additional cost to oversee the work along with the contractor's bid, like we're doing today.
Okay. And normally there's some engineer that comes on to oversee a big project like that?
Absolutely, yeah. They're known as the engineer of record. And so at the end of the project, they have to sign and seal drawings attesting that what was constructed was what they designed.
And they're our city employee, the engineer of record?
No, they're one of our continuing services consultants.
Okay.
And so it's a third party that we selected for this project.
Why don't we do it in-house?
Quite frankly, we don't have the resources to do that. It would be nice if we did, but unfortunately, we don't.
Tara, you have something to add?
It's always good to get educated.
Good question. Tara Kivett, Engineering Director. Especially the highly technical projects at the wastewater treatment plants. If you're not designing them and doing them every day, it's, our civil engineers, we don't have that kind of expertise, roadway projects, things like that. So in addition to resources, it's also a matter of a level of expertise. So we're more comfortable hiring a design consultant who that's all they do, is they design wastewater treatment plants.
Other questions? Consent?
Yes.
Yep.
3.5.
Approve the conveyance of a distribution easement to Duke Energy Florida LLC, DBA Duke Energy, for the installation, operation, and maintenance of electric facilities from an existing Duke transformer located on city property to a Duke pedestal located in the right-of-way that will support a Verizon cell pole. Mr. Burzak.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Robert Burzak, Real Estate Services Coordinator. The proposed easement will provide Duke Energy with the property rights necessary to construct and maintain its electrical equipment within the easement. The engineering department supports conveyance of the distribution easement.
Where's the cell tower going? I don't see that on the diagram.
It's actually is on the diagram. It's in the right-of-way.
Okay,
Where it ends in the little yellow line, where the little island is,
I don't have a yellow line, but I see there's
on
a,
the aerial map.
okay. Is that gonna be disguised, or is it just gonna be
It's going to be a cell tower.
just gonna be a cell tower? Right there in Pier 60. Okay. Other questions?
I mean, the yellow line on our picture is not necessarily going across the sidewalk. It's actually going up, but it's not in 3 dimension.
Well, it's actually, that's where the facilities are actually proposed to go. They're not built yet, of course, but there's a transformer where the little blue triangle is.
Right,
There's a transformer currently there.
okay.
And they're gonna run facilities to the end where this yellow line is. That's where the proposed cell tower is, in the right of way. Unfortunately, legislation allows them to do that.
Are we getting a lease payment?
No.
Why not? I mean, if you rent the roof of a building, you pay a lease payment.
Well, there's currently existing transformer,
There is?
yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor, you had a question?
Yeah, this is a 5G cell tower?
Correct.
Sure it is.
So it's not like a typical looking cell tower. It's going to be like a pipe on the top of a pole, basically.
Correct.
How high does it go?
I'm not sure of that.
Most of them are about 25, 30 feet, I think.
I thought I saw 10.
It's like a regular light pole, but it has like a 3-inch pipe.
No, that's,
Goes up about 5 feet. At least the way the rest of them are on the beach.
Tara may know the answer to that.
Tara Kivett, Engineering Director. I don't know the exact height, but there's some serious legislative restrictions here that we really can't say no to the bulk of these requests. And so, oh great, thank you. There's a visual. So we try to work with the providers to try to find a place that is the least obtrusive. So in that landscape island, it's going to be kind of around some of the palm trees, and it's not much higher than the existing palm trees. There's all sorts of different types of these cell towers, but yes, they're eventually being installed to support 5G. But next time you're out there driving around, they're black. There's one on Devon that's a good example, right at that triangle-shaped island right off of
Hampton.
yeah. So that's a good kind of precursor. But we can, I'll send you an update. I'll share with all of you some of the input we've gotten from our legal team about really what options we have. We have very few options.
Well, we've had a lot of emails about 5G and we've sent responses, so I'm sure the council's seen all that on the legislation. But it'd be nice if it was somehow disguised. I see cell towers disguised sometimes. That's right in the center of our front yard, so. Consent?
Yes.
All right, we're gonna take a quick recess. We're at the 2-hour mark.
5 minutes?
10, 5,
Mayor,
yes?
can I get you to do this symbol when you're ready to go back?
Yeah.
Because what's happening is you say a time, and they're going back live at that time, and all the chitter chatter that's happening before you guys know we're live is going over to air.
You see,
All right.
So we can do this.
reconvene the November 2nd work session. We are on item 4.1.
Approve settlement of workers' compensation claim 190000133 for payment of $112,500 inclusive of attorney fees and costs from William Narodny with a general release of all claims and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Osorio.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Good morning. Rick Osorio, Risk Manager. Mr. Naharodny was an active duty police officer with the Clearwater Police Department as of June 12, 2006. In November of 2019, he sustained a neck and right shoulder injury while on duty. As a result of this injury, he had surgery during February 2020. However, due to continuing symptoms, he was relegated to light duty work status due to his inability to fully return to work. The city spent approximately $90,000 in total for his medical treatment, legal and investigative costs, and disability payments to date. The city faces potential future payments of $70,000 for the treatment of his condition and complications, and $60,000 in disability payments if his condition worsens, along with additional legal and investigative costs that could reach $10,000. The city's potential exposure is approximately $140,000 in future medical care, lost wages, and legal fees. A mediation was agreed to and held on September 17th, 2020, which eventually resulted in a settlement of $112,500 on October 15th, 2020, contingent on council approval. The Risk Management Division, the outside attorney for the city of Clearwater, Banker Lopez Gassler, PA, and the city's Claims Committee recommend approval. Funding for this payment, for the settlement is available in the budget for claims expense in the Central Insurance Fund. The Risk Management Division is respectfully requesting approval of this settlement. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Hamilton.
Just for the public's knowledge, so we probably don't go through, all parties, the city, Mr. Naharodny, and his representatives have all worked on this, and this is an agreed-upon settlement, correct?
Yes,
By
sir.
all parties.
That is correct, by all
Thank you.
parties. Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Consent?
Yep.
5.1.
Accept a gas utility easement from Spaleo Properties LLC for the construction, installation, and maintenance of gas facility utilities on real property located at 600 alternate U.S. Highway 19, Pinellas County, and adopt the appropriate resolution. Mr. Langill.
Good morning, Brian Langill, Assistant Director for Clearwater Gas System. This is a gas utility easement for us to install a line to serve a commercial customer up in Palm Harbor, just north of Tampa Road. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. 6.1.
Approve an addendum to an agreement with Exxon Enterprise, Inc. of Scottsdale, Arizona, in the amount of $17,319 plus a contingency amount of $50,000 for interview room recording equipment and licenses in accordance with the Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.5641D, other government entities bids, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Chief,
Ready to sub on you. Dalton.
Major Dalton.
Not used to seeing you in normal clothing.
Yeah, so I'm sure it switches things up. We didn't anticipate me presenting it today, but this item, back in February of 2019, the council approved an agreement between Axon and the city for our digital evidence management system, and that which ultimately became the foundation for the body cameras. In April of 2019, the city council also approved an agreement for 5 interview room cameras in our DUI route, which are already in place. As a result of the Deadly Force Investigations Task Force, we're seeking permission to add 2 more camera systems to our existing system. These cameras are available on the national through the National Purchasing Partners. It's a national resource for public entities to obtain pricing. The price of this camera is these 2 cameras is approximately $9,200, with annual recurring costs of approximately $2,600 per year. So that the cost of the agreement over the course of it will be approximately $8,000. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chief Dalton? Councilmember Hamilton.
I know, we always see contingency numbers on these things, but for a $17,000 project to have a $50,000 contingency, that seems like a big contingency.
And we're trying to avoid having to come back to you with all these incremental additions of cameras. So you see the cost of this one to add 2 cameras is approximately $10,000. We don't anticipate using it, but to prohibit us or prevent us from having to come back every time we want to add 2 cameras here or a camera here, that's anticipated over the life of the contract. So we don't anticipate, as I said, spending it, but if we do, we could add 2 cameras, another room here, another room. It's about $10,000 a room plus the cost of the recurring cost of maintenance. So we're just trying to prevent having to come back to you all every time we want to add a camera.
Thank you for that explanation.
Other questions? Councilmember Beckman.
Okay, so we have 6 interview rooms, 5 for criminal investigations and 1 for DUI. How often are they all in use at the same time?
At the same time?
I mean, is that why you have?
No, but they're wired for every single room. So we have 5 rooms and a DUI room. This will be a 6th room.
Right.
So we have to have the infrastructure in there to actually utilize the room. In terms of every single one being utilized at exactly the same time, I'm not aware of a circumstance that that's actually occurred, but you need the infrastructure in place to use the room at all.
Right. So, but if they're not all being used, so my question really is, do we need one designated for the multi-agency agreement? And what's the drawback of a wait and see if we really need to have one more room for that interagency work?
You needed a room to accommodate the attorneys that are typically involved in this, and the size of our typical interview rooms are a little small for that purpose, so we're adding a room so that all the parties involved in those can actually fit in that space.
Okay. And this was, this is that deadly force kind of task force,
Yes.
right? That we talked about earlier in the spring. So it's not in effect, so we don't know how frequently that's even going to meet, right? I mean,
Well, you don't
Hopefully
know.
not at all.
right. And if it's not at all, why would we spend for this room right now?
Because you need the infrastructure in place to be able to utilize it at all. So when that task force is activated, you need the space and the recording ability to accommodate all the parties that will be in the room at the same time. And our existing interview rooms, they're used all the time. I mean, obviously not all at the same time,
Right.
but they're a little small. They're basically set up for the individual being interviewed and
Like
perhaps
the
a
TV
detective or
movie
two.
thing, like-
But now you're talking about bringing in the state attorney's office, the officers' council, our detectives. You start adding 5 or 6, 7 people in a room, and it's a little bit of a small space in our
Your
existing
reps,
interview rooms.
probably.
Yeah, when our existing interview rooms are a little small to accommodate what you might have between 7 and 10 people in the room. So this will give us the infrastructure to accommodate that and have the recording ability already set up in there.
And I would assume that if it's set up and we're not going to be using it very often, hopefully, that it can be used for other things,
Oh,
other
for
types
sure.
of questioning.
No,
It's not just set aside and locked
No,
for
no,
only this.
it could be used for anything that the system is used for, but our existing rooms are a little small. This gives us a little bit more flexibility, but it's not currently on the system, those rooms. So by having that infrastructure in place, we're able to utilize.
Okay. I'm all about acting proactively, but I guess if the determining factor is the square footage in the room, and we don't have a room big enough to accommodate the anticipated number of professionals in a questioning, then I guess we have to do it.
That is essentially why we're adding this room.
Okay.
Consent?
Yes.
7.1.
Approve the selection of construction manager at risk, Biltmore Construction Company, Inc. of Bel Air, Florida, per REFQ 18-20 for Fire Station 46, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Chief Ellis.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Scott Ellis, Fire Chief, Clearwater Fire and Rescue. This item before you is a request to approve the selection of Biltmore Construction as the construction manager at risk for Fire Station 46 on Clearwater Beach. Approximately a year ago, we started the process to redo Fire Station 46 located on North Beach. The process included selection of an architect of record as well as several months of identifying the needs and the ability to maintain the fire station in its current location. This fire station is a critical asset for public safety in the North Beach area as well as an icon for all that visit the area. As mentioned earlier, the challenges of this location and the needs of its community were overwhelming, but we have been able to overcome them and provide a design that fulfills the requirement. In April of 2020, we held an RFQ for the top 4 respondent firms of a previous request in which the review committee identified Biltmore Construction as a recommended construction manager at risk for this project. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the chief? Councilmember Hamilton.
Well, I appreciate our one-on-ones, Chief, and I see Station 46 almost daily, so I'm very familiar with it. And I'm not trying to throw a fly in the ointment here. Trust me, I'm not. But this is, because you and I had this conversation, if we go back 5-6 years from where we are today, and if we'd be looking at that entire parcel of land, we could address a parking need and incorporate a new fire station into the design of the parking structure. So, but by doing it this way, we're kind of eliminating that opportunity. But I know that we've gone down this road a long way, and it's time to replace this fire station. So, okay.
Other comments or questions? It's stated in the agenda item, Chief, that Biltmore's built a lot in the flood hazard areas. What other projects have they done?
For us, I don't know if they have, yeah, nothing for us, but I know they have worked in some of the other municipalities around us on that. I can
You
get
don't
all
have
that.
examples
I can get all that.
specifically?
I don't have those examples. I can get you some.
Tara's coming again.
You ought to stay in the front, Tara.
Tara Kivet, Engineering Director. They've done many stations down in the Keys, mostly Marathon, that area, so a lot down there. I was involved in some of their earlier RFQs, because for the city, as you know, they have built the main station 45. Biltmore also constructed the Countryside Station 50. But Biltmore specifically has done a lot of work in the Keys.
Okay. Consent?
Yes.
8.1.
Provide direction on the proposed hotel development agreement between Key Clearwater LLC, who is the property owner, and the city of Clearwater, providing for the allocation of 3 units from the hotel density reserve under Beach by Design, and confirm a second public hearing in city council chambers before city council on November 19, 2020 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as may be heard. Mr. Perry.
Thank you. Mark Perry, Planning and Development. If it's okay, just to save a little bit of time, this request and the next request are very, very much related. And if it's okay, I'd like to do maybe just one overall presentation to save a little time.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So I'll speak to both of them at the same time. So these are 2 hotel development agreements. 3 units are proposed to be allocated to what we're calling Parcel A, which is the northerly parcel, and 2 units are proposed to be allocated to Parcel B, which is the more southerly parcel. Although at this point, it is only one parcel. There's only one parcel ID number, and that's why both of the requests have the same address. So a little bit of history, just a little bit. Both of the site consists of 2 hotels. It originally consisted of 5 parcels that were combined together into 2 parcels, Parcel A, Parcel B. At some point, we're not sure, the Pinellas County Property Appraiser apparently combined them through a combination. They combined both parcels into one piece of property. At the same time, as part of the history, when both hotels were built, overall, there were a total of 260 hotel units approved, including 174 allocated from the reserve. They only built a total of 255, and both development agreements, well, all of our hotel development agreements require that if you don't build all of the units, well, any units that you had allocated that you didn't build, well, they go back into the reserve, which is exactly what happened. So a total of 5 units went back into the reserve. which is where the 3 units being allocated to parcel A and the 2 units being allocated to parcel B. That's the 5 units that they want to rebuild onto the site. So there's that aspect, and there's a part where both parcels were combined together. That combination had caused a few problems. First of all, Beach by Design says that you can't allocate more than 100 units to any given parcel. So the second that they combined both parcels into one parcel, now they had like 174 units. So the choices were either give back 74 units and we'll call it even, or we need to split these parcels back out. So that's another aspect of this, that they will recreate 2 parcels. So mathematically, they're not bifurcating any hotel units, and the amount of land area makes everything work. So it's complicated but simple at the same time. So the ultimate request is to get 5 units back onto the site from the reserve, bring the total complement of hotel units back up to 260 units. These units will be completely accommodated within the building. So from anyone outside the building, you won't notice any difference. There's no additional height. There's no additions to the building. The only exterior work, which is only noted on the side really, is they're planning on adding about 2,000 square feet of outdoor seating area for dining along the north side of the site on 3rd, and on the west side of the site, well really the northwest quadrant of the site along Coronado. So realistically, the only thing that anyone will notice on the site itself would be a little bit of additional outdoor dining and seating. I think I've covered almost everything. Are there any questions that I can try to answer?
Do you have anything to add, Ms. Hagan?
No, sir.
Okay. Questions? Councilmember Hamilton?
Yeah, I mean, this is total interior renovation of it's already been built. The hotel, the structure's there. They're taking a couple larger rooms and subdividing it into smaller rooms and making interior renovations to get back to the number of rooms they were supposed to build originally anyways, correct?
Correct.
And then we just need to be able to delineate parcel 1 and parcel 2 to do that.
Right, they need to legally separate them back out. The applicant says they have no idea how it happened, so.
Yeah, and I have no problem with this.
Other questions? Councilmember Beckman?
I mean, it was pretty confusing. I mean, talking about, lines to jut out the 5 different rooms. It's like I had a hard time envisioning that inside. I mean.
Right, and the reason that the proposed property line, which would be the common adjoining property line between parcel A and parcel B, does all those gymnastics, is to simply avoid bifurcating any hotel units. We can't have half a hotel unit on one site and half on the other. So it's specifically drawn to avoid units.
All right, we'll have a first, second hearing, right? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So that takes care of 8.1 and 2, correct?
Yes.
All right, 9.1.
Amend the Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 33.055, relating to the mooring, beaching, and placement of vessels, and pass ordinance number 9413-20 on first reading. Mr. Chesney.
Ed Chesney, Marine and Aviation. This is the same item that was discussed at our last meeting. I'll bring it back to you with a little bit of clarity on the enforcement piece. I'll just summarize for those that may have not heard it the last time. The city has very limited public docking spaces, a number less than 25. And right now we have ordinances that allows you to be there from 8 a.m. in the morning until 10 p.m. at night. And to provide turnover, we're really seeing some of those spaces being monopolized by certain people all day long. So it made sense for us to put some time limits on the ordinance. And, since last time, we further evaluated the 3-hour time limit, and we've increased that to 4, that gives 1 extra hour for events or some other dinner plans or whatever the user was going to take advantage of. But with respect to the ordinance and the enforcement, right now we are proposing to use Pinellas County's uniform fine schedule for local ordinances. This is a miscellaneous ordinance that deals with the Marine Patrol, Fish and Wildlife Conservation, and Natural Resource violations. So this is a Class 4 violation for overstaying your welcome at the dock. And the fee for that is $105 for that fine. And then there's some court costs that would go for an uncontested, bringing that up to $118. But I wanted to point out in that same Marine Patrol area, what other types of violations have the same Class 4 fine. And some of those are improper use of public wharfs, bathing in boat channels, bow riding, trespass on docks or slips, unlawful use of nets, anchoring as to obstruct beaches or channels, and bringing your watercraft into a bathing area. So you see the county and the Fish and Wildlife have already put together a group of violations of this nature, and that's the one we're proposing to follow. And it would be cumbersome talking to PD to try to alter that and do something differently for us. So we have not changed how we want to enforce this, so I just wanted to be more clear on how we got to this position.
Questions for Mr. Chesney?
No, I was the one that had a problem. It was clearly explained to me by our city attorney on why the fine is what it is. So I'm okay there. I hope I don't ever have to pay it, but I think the 4 hour is a reasonable time because, using the Palm Pavilion or Frenchie's as an example, someone comes by boat, docks, comes and has a meal, listens to a little music, and then wants to take a walk on the beach. 3 hours for that entire time could get a little dicey. 4 hours is more reasonable, and trying to encourage people to, be active and do things, I think 4 hours is a good number.
I'm glad we found the sweet spot.
We'll call
Vice
it
Mayor.
a sweet spot.
Yeah, I agree with the sweet spot too. 4 hours is a lot better than 3 for making it welcome. My concern is how we're going to monitor that. And I know we're going to have to put signage up probably first to do that, and then you'll have to come up with some way that if it does get abused, that you find out what that hourly, when people get there and when they leave and how you'd know that. So
You're using cameras,
We're going to use cameras, and that'll be very easy for us to see when vessels arrive and depart because we can back the cameras up and we'll have timestamps when they're there. And usually the complaints on these public docks don't come from the city, they come from the people around the public docks. We get the complaints from the businesses over there, some of the condominiums. They will tell you, hey, this vessel's been there all day, it's been there overnight. So we have our own little code enforcement around these public docks. So it's easy for us to then backtrack and find out when they arrived and when they left, or if they left.
good.
I had a question.
Councilmember Beckman.
Do we have a problem with kayaks and jet skis taking up big spaces, and should that be a concern? I mean, there are 2 people on a vessel as well, but, is there a way to corral all those little guys together to?
Yes, and we do have a problem with that. So when we make our new signs for this, we're going to have directional signs for the kayaks and jet skis. They can park on the back sides of these docks or in one slip in particular. We can isolate one for these kayaks because what happens is you'll have a 40-foot slip and a bigger boat is coming in. They don't see that kayak down in the slip until it's, oh gosh, I was going to dock here. Now I've got to, abort and try to fit into another slip. So we're going to have some signs that'll tell you the size of the slip. So when you're coming and you already know you're too big or too small for it, and try to direct those smaller vessels elsewhere.
Councilmember Hamilton.
I guess that raises another question for me, but, as far as kayaks are concerned, is it possible to have some sort of rack so that a kayak, for instance, I mean, most people are used to putting their kayaks in the water and pulling it out of the water. So what would be, a kayak being able to take the kayak out of the water and putting it somewhere up on land and out of the way so that it's not sitting in a slip? That's my first question. My second one is, who's actually issuing the citation? Is it your department, or is it going to be parking enforcement, or what?
It's going to be PD and Marine Patrol.
Okay. Now, the kayaks, what do you?
Well, I mean, that's a little bit awkward depending on the location. If the city owns the uplands adjacent to these docks, I guess you could put some racks there, but
Don't we?
not in all cases. Like behind the aquarium owns the uplands. Behind Island Way Grill owns the uplands. The Beach Rec Center, yes, we do own the uplands behind the Sand Pearl dock. So it's not always the case that the city has uplands available for storage or racking of kayaks. But we could look into that, absolutely, at select locations.
I think that's a good idea, because I always worry about my kayak being taken or something, and if you could
If we had a
rack it and put a
secure it to
lock
the
on
rack
it.
and everything. I mean, kayak users and kayak owners are used
What do
to
we could
putting them
pay.
in and taking them out.
What do you say?
He's saying, show me the money.
Oh, well, we could charge. I mean, I'd pay $4 to have my kayak locked up or something, or, racked up.
You're generous with your money.
Not always.
Not in front of the post office.
No, I'm not. I hold on to my quarters in front of the post office.
I will add, though, that the kayaks that we see most at these public docks are not the recreational kayaks. They're the kayaks that are coming from the liveaboards out in the harbor. So people use those kayaks to come to the beach, and they stay there all day. So that's why we have the problem with a kayak in a slip all day. So we had the problem at the beach marina with a kayak platform, and Fish and Wildlife told me several years ago that that's an attractor. You're going to have the more access you give to those to your facility, the more of these people mooring around it are going to be. So we had people that were working on the beach or going anywhere, and they would keep these kayaks all day long. We didn't know whose they were not tagged. So I removed the floating kayak dock at the beach to keep that activity from occurring all day long at our fuel dock, because they would come into the fuel dock and it was a problem. So the recreational kayaks are not our problems. It's the people that live out on the intercoastal end.
Anything else? All right, 10.1. Thank you, Mr. Chesney.
Authorize a purchase order to AdEdge Water Technologies LLC of Duluth, Georgia for arsenic removal media at Reverse Osmosis Plant 1, RO1, per award of invitation to bid 4820 in the annual not-to-exceed amount of $93,303, which includes a 5% contingency of $4,443 for the period of November 18, 2020 through November 17, 2021, with 2 one-year renewal options at the city's discretion, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Gardner.
Good morning. Rich Gardner, Assistant Director of Public Utilities. The arsenic removal media is used to remove naturally occurring arsenic that's in the raw water prior to treatment and distribution at our RO1 water treatment plant. There were 2 bidders for this contract. AdEdge was a low bidder, and it's a not-to-exceed contract. This is a 1-year contract with the option for 2 one-year renewals. Happy to answer any questions.
I think I'd like to get rid of arsenic, so I'm going to vote for this. Everyone else, any questions? Councilmember Beckman?
I wanted to thank you sincerely for putting that notation on there about the bids, and I know there's another one coming up, but that none of them were from minority or women-owned businesses that submitted a bid, but I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Consent? Yes. 10.2.
Authorize the award of invitation to bid 4920 ductile iron pipe fittings, mechanical joint restraints, and polyethylene tubing to Ferguson Waterworks of Tampa, Florida, in the annual not-to-exceed amount of $345,000, with the option for 2 one-year term extensions at the city's discretion, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Gardner again.
These pipe and fittings are stocked in Public Utilities Warehouse and used in the construction of new pipelines and repair of existing ones. There were 8 bidders for this contract. Ferguson Waterworks was the low bidder. Again, it's a not-to-exceed contract. This is a 1-year contract with the option for 2 one-year renewals. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Beckman.
So you said this is the low bidder, but we have a couple of lower bidders, and I know that they have to be up to standards, but then there's a yellow discrepancy.
This, I probably should have been more clear. This is the lowest responsible bidder.
Yeah, the responsible.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly why the other bidders were thrown out, but usually purchasing does that before we get it.
Okay.
Consent?
Yes.
Okay, 11.1. Ms. Cole?
Appoint 1 member to the Marine Advisory Board to fill the remainder of an unexpired term through March 31st, 2021.
Council members, in your agenda packet had applications for Julie Battaglia, Miranda Douglas, Roger Schulman, Aaron Smith-Levin, David Farrar, Dina Stanley, Michael Bergeron, and Nicole Kent. Mr. Ken Marlowe has resigned, and he was serving, and he was filling his first term. Sorry.
Questions, comments? Ms. Douglas is somewhat in the business.
That's what stood out to me as I looked at them as well. I thought, she is involved with businesses on the water and whatnot, so.
Councilmember Bunker?
I've known Aaron Smith-Levin for several years now, and he's always impressed me by his commitment to the community, and he's very active with the Skycrest Neighborhood Committee, and he was in the Clearwater Academy, I think a year before I went to it, and his enthusiasm there made me decide, well, I really want to do this. And then when I got to the Clearwater Academy last year, Aaron seemed to be a legend for being the guy asking lots of good questions. And he mentions in his resume that he worked on the last campaign. He was one of my advisors on that. But I still stand behind him as a terrific supporter of the community and a detail-oriented guy.
Okay.
I like Miranda, Miss Douglas for this. I mean, I like that she's got a minority female-owned business. She's a lifelong resident in the area, and she's been a leader in a number of ways throughout our community with different nonprofits, the Clearwater Urban Leadership Coalition, and really taken an initiative. I think she'd be a great addition there for diversity in particular.
Vice Mayor?
I agree with that.
All right, well, I don't have consensus on it, so we'll vote on it on Thursday. 11.2.
Appoint Lucas Geraldi Smith to the Sister Cities Advisory Board as a youth member with term to expire October 31st, 2024. Councilmember, he is the only applicant on file, and he is currently filling the remainder of an unexpired term.
Any questions? Consent?
Yes.
11.3.
Appoint 1 member to the Community Development Board as the alternate member to fill the remainder of an unexpired term through April 30, 2022. Council members, in your agenda pack, Ms. Van Scoyk has resigned. She has moved out of the city limits. And you have applications for Chelsea Allison, Leslie Coley, Brenda Dallas Griffith, David J., Peter Kohut, and Nils Costa.
Any questions?
I like, as I looked at these, and I think, we always say, with our Citizens Academy. The Citizens Academy is a great feeding ground and breeding ground for the, for all of our advisory boards, and I'm happy to see a lot of these people as, graduates of the Citizens Academy. But in this case, given what this board does and everything, the one that I like is Mr. Kushta, because he's in the construction business, and that's an area of expertise on the Community Development Board that we do not have right now.
I would agree with that.
I agree as well, because that's an important board. We don't have one in construction, and I always thought that was an important part to understanding.
Well, having served on it, so did you. I mean, it's important that there's somebody there to ask tough questions from the different trades. So I think that's important. Are there other comments or questions?
Mr. Colbert has similar qualifications. He's done advisement to cities and town plan commissions in Indiana, site plan review, subdivision review, and utilities.
We'll talk about on Thursday. 11.4.
Appoint 3 members to the Municipal Code Enforcement Board with terms to expire October 31st, 2023. Appoint 1 member to fill the remainder of an unexpired term through October 31st, 2021. And appoint 1 member to fill the remainder of an unexpired term through October 31st, 2022. Council members, we had quite a few changes on the board. Mr. Carruthers and Ms. Johnson did not express interest in being reappointed. Sheila Cole is can be reappointed. She's filling currently an unexpired term. Mr. Prast and Mr. Engel both have resigned as well. And so in your agenda packs, you have applications for Mr. Greg Brown, Lena Teixeira, David Farrar, Peter Kohut, Nicole Bray, and Robert Farrar.
Well, I'd support Ms. Cole being reappointed.
That was one of mine, Ms. Cole being reappointed. I actually thought this would be a better fit. This is where I had Mr. Kohut, given his background in the various, as an engineer in the various municipalities and whatnot. I thought, and he's very, he's been active. We've dealt with him on a number of things. He's very active on the Island Estates issues and whatnot. So, I thought this would be a good spot for him. And then the last one, either Ms. Teixeira or I keep getting mixed up between Mr. Farrar and Ferrer. I believe, without looking, I think it was Mr. Ferrer that was my number 3.
And Mr. Brown, because he's been on the nuisance abatement board, and Mr. Teixeira. But I don't make motions, so we'll talk about that one on Thursday too.
There's a lot of good ones there, and we've got more candidates than we have openings.
Yep.
They're all good.
That's fine. Any questions about second readings to include the emergency proclamation? Seeing none. City manager verbal reports?
Mayor, the only thing that I would mention is I'm starting to I got some questions today about, from a present CEO of an agency telling me that his employees are a little concerned about election-related violence, discord, that sort of thing, and was wondering what the cities were doing to address it. And, law enforcement is well aware of that concern, and polling locations are I think, certainly being monitored appropriately, and we're not receiving any intelligence that would indicate that there is any any concern about violence related to the election. So in case you all get those kinds of questions, Dan assures me, and as well as the sheriff, that concern is being addressed.
Any comments or questions for the city manager? I certainly hope people will accept the results of the election, whatever direction it goes. One of the things I think we should pride ourselves on is transfer of power in this country.
Mayor, yesterday we had on US 19 Cypress Shopping Center, we had northbound Biden caravan, and then we had a southbound caravan across 19 of Trump. A Biden person got into the Trump caravan and started to slow down and create some issues surrounded by the Trump caravan, and eventually it got diffused. But those are the kinds of incidents that have occurred over the weekend, and I think that adds to the concern that people have.
Okay. Ms. Aiken, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Council discussion items, city manager, city attorney salary discussion. Ms. Poyer?
Good morning, Mayor and council members. At the last meeting in October, the performance evaluations were discussed on both the city manager and city attorney, and as is with past practice, at the subsequent meeting is when the council discusses any increase provided for both. You have been provided updated salary information in terms of what our comparables look like, and on all occasions, both if you include the counties, the surrounding counties, and if you take them out, the salaries, the actual salaries for both the city manager and city attorney lag behind our comparables. Also provided to you all was a historical perspective in terms of what types of increases have been provided to both the city manager and city attorney. For reference, last year they were provided a 3.5% increase. This year there is a budgeted amount for a 3.5% increase. Anything additional would require a budget amendment. And additionally, we did look at some similar size by population and by FTE count for comparables as well, and those also showed that both the current incumbent salaries lag behind that of their comparables. I'm available if there's any questions.
Questions for Ms. Poyer? Have you been making this decision at the work sessions?
No, it's normally done at the meeting on Thursday.
That's the way we used to, so, okay. Any questions that you need to make a decision on Thursday, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I noticed, I don't see it on this one, maybe this was updated, but the paperwork we got before with the comparables, for instance, when you were showing us charts of, county or cities, and then the data minus the county jurisdictions, something didn't line up right.
Yeah, we fixed it.
Okay.
That has been fixed and updated in your packet.
And these are the newest, these the actual, you've called on these and.
Yes, we reached out to each entity, and those are the actual salaries.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing nothing there, we'll discuss that on Thursday. 15.2 is timeline for a search for a city manager and discussion just about process.
Hello again. So I do have a presentation. This was asked to be provided just to give you all an update in terms of what type of a time frame and what all would be involved in terms of a city manager selection. And this is based on the guidelines that were provided by the ICMA. So if you need additional information, that's a very lengthy document. We try to condense that here for you. When considering the recruitment for an executive such as a city manager, there are typically 3 options for you to consider. You can do an retain a professional recruitment service such as a headhunter to conduct that. That is what staff would recommend for such a search as this. You can have the recruitment done in-house. Your HR department is certainly capable of doing such a thing, although, again, we recommend that it be done by an outside recruitment firm who has exclusive experience doing that. It hasn't been done in the city for a very long time. Or you could do a hybrid approach, which is where you would allocate certain activities to be conducted by your HR department and then certain activities to be done by the executive search firm. And so you could do any of those three things. By having the hybrid approach, you just have to make sure that we have a very well-defined strategy in terms of who's going to do what, and that would need to be included in that document. So I'm going to talk about the professional recruitment timeframe first, because this is separate from the actual recruitment for the city manager process. So to select a recruitment firm, we're anticipating an approximate 3 months. And the reason why we are anticipating that is because you have to post the RFP. That typically takes about 30 days. That's what our process is here, is we post those for 30 days. You then have to provide for a review timeframe so that the committee can review all the proposals and including invite any of the professionals back should they want to have an in-person presentation done. And then we would bring the recommendation to the council to award the contract, and then the work would begin within 30 days of that. So we're anticipating a 3-month process for that. The average cost is anywhere between $30,000 and $75,000. We did a quick search to see what that's been going for, and it's in that range. It really depends on what services that the council wants the executive recruitment firm to handle. If we did it in-house, whereas we would absolutely save on the RFP, and you wouldn't have that initial 3-month time span, we do think it would still end up taking just as much time because the HR department is not only dedicated to conducting that search. So I don't think you would have any time savings. There would just be the financial savings. And with that, because of what you can get from an executive search firm and how long it's been since that's been done with the city, we would still absolutely we recommend that. The hybrid approach isn't going to have any time savings either. And again, you would just really need to make sure you had a clear definition as to who was going to be doing what, and then make sure that we had a contract that would state that. Now, talking about the actual recruitment process. So the RFP process we talked about, and that's about 3 months. This was anticipated to be an additional 3 to 6 months. And the reason why is it would need to be advertised. In that ICMA booklet, they actually recommend 90 days. However, since we don't rely on print advertisements anymore, whereas you used to rely on those circulars, we think that that could be done in 30 or 60 or somewhere in between that, because it'll be instantaneous with posting it. But nonetheless, you're still going to be looking at 30 to 60 days for that. You would also then have the process in terms of conducting interviews, doing background checks, negotiating the contract with that individual. And then after that, the administrator would start anywhere from 30 to 60 days, depending on where it is that they're coming from. So in total, you're looking at an additional 3 to 6 months for the actual recruitment process for the city manager. There's some other considerations that the council should be considering when looking at this. For example, where do you want to search for a candidate? Do you want that to be locally or statewide or a nationwide search? ICMA and staff absolutely would recommend that you would do a nationwide search for this position, perhaps having some parameters that you would want them to have coastal experience, but Florida experience might not necessarily be something that's required. Something else the council need to consider is how do you want to review the applications? So does the council want to look at every application that we receive, or do you want that to be vetted? Do you want to only look at the top 5 or the top 20? So that's something that would need to be considered. Additionally, is the type of interview process. So you have a lot of options with this, and you can do one or all or a combination thereof. So do you want to have a public interview where you would have the candidate come here and do it in this forum? Would you rather do it individually? Would you rather do it both? And then you also have the community engagement piece as well. Is that something else that you'd want to consider for this position? A big one that really needs to be well defined is the salary range. So as posted, we do have an updated salary range. This was just recently updated with the PSPC study. But both staff and ICMA don't recommend you advertising a range. You advertise an anticipated starting salary. Now, that can be a narrow range depending on qualifications, but you wouldn't want to list the whole range unless you anticipate or are willing to pay that entire range. So that's something that's going to need to be well defined in terms of what are you willing to pay for a city manager. And then lastly, in terms of a transition, so that's something else that would need to be decided. What kind of a transition do you want? Do you want the current city manager to provide a transition? And also, how long of a transition would you be anticipating? Or would you want to appoint an assistant city manager or a department head? And then another option that a lot of entities do is that they hire like a retired administrator to provide that transition period. So in summary, you're looking at 6 to 9 months from start to finish, especially if you're doing the RFP process, what we would recommend. Those fees are going to be determined in terms of how it is that you pick who's going to do what and what all you want to encompass, especially on the interview process and the background. And then the actual selection of the candidate is going to take 3 to 6 months. Any questions?
So the reason I wanted this on the agenda is so that we could at least talk about it, because it is a long process. And, you know, I think you can at least knock out a portion of the process. Personally, I believe that we ought to hire a national firm. I think it ought to be a national search. I think it ought to be a national firm. Oftentimes you relook at the job description through that process. I believe that national firms are going to have city managers that they've already placed somewhere that were potentially interested to move into a bigger job. I don't want somebody that jumps around, but they are going to have the advantage of already knowing some city managers around the country. And I think we've got a great HR department. I don't think they're really equipped to do a national search. And, you know, I had just gone through this process, and you two heard that on the campaign trail, but we used a national firm. They did have some ideas of different people that they thought, that they reached out to and said, we think this is a good fit for you. They at least applied. We narrowed it down from 76 to 13 that we went through all their resumes and did phone interviews. And then from there, did 6 personal interviews with everybody. Personally, I think that, you know, we ought to have meetings with the community so people can get to know them, but I also would like to have one-on-one interviews where you can get to know the person better and what their philosophy is on things, their past experience and whatnot. But I thought, you know, we don't have a timeline, but this is a 3-month process that we could at least start to work on. So I'd love to hear all of your thoughts, comments.
Well, I definitely think, you know, and kudos to Mr. Horn for being here 20 years, but after being here for 20 years, there's no doubt we need to do a national search, in my eyes, no doubt. The process that Jennifer's laid out, I think, is great. And Mr. Horn, when the time comes, you know, we're looking at a 3 to 6 month, and I'm gonna look at it more as a 6-month process. I would hope, you know, we would get that kind of a timeline, you know, when the time comes from the city manager rather than, you know, because to have a smooth. Now, as far as transition after the process, everybody's different. You know, the new city manager might be more interested in just coming in and say, look, this is my job now. I'm good. I'll learn on the job. Others might want a little help. So I think we wait and see what the candidates are and what their preference is as far as that. But I can tell you without a doubt, we're going to have a discussion Thursday night on how much to pay Mr. Horn. I can promise you what we're paying him right now is not going to get us our next city manager. It will not get our next city manager. Well, we could get one for that number, but it's not going to be the person you want. Excuse me for saying the guy. It just won't. You know, we need to be willing, we need to understand that and be prepared for it. We've gotten a great bang for our buck from Mr. Horn.
And Ms. Aiken.
And Ms. Aiken. Well, we're not talking about her right now, so.
I'm just going to throw a kudos out to both.
Well, yeah, and you know, well, and we're going to have to do a search for Miss Aiken's replacement at some point too, and along those lines, I'm not sure we need to do a national search for that. I think a more regional approach is better for that position, because it needs to be someone who is Florida bar certified, and hopefully somebody from this area. I mean, Pam came to us from the city of Tampa when she was hired, so I think, we're probably okay. That's the approach I would prefer to see in that situation. But for Mr. Horn, I think, this is, with what Clearwater's going through and where we're headed and everything we got going, there's no doubt in my mind that a national search is where we need to be.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I went through this with one of the organizations about 10 years ago that I was affiliated with, and we went nationally. It did take about 9 months, to get it all done. But we had for a city manager, this is kind of what, when I knew Mr. Horn wanted to retire about the 20-year mark, this is one of the things on my campaign that I wanted to be here, to be involved in. This is very important for the city. So I think we go for the best we can get, and I agree with what Mr. Hamilton said, that we're going to be probably hiring somebody that's going to be paid more than what Bill gets paid now. We're glad that he's been with us for 20 years, and normally city managers last, 4 or 5 years. So
4 years.
I think I'm looking forward to that coming up and getting that process started.
Councilmember Bunker?
I actually agree with the entire routine that you suggested. We definitely need a nationwide search by a professional firm. And, I really enjoyed the one-on-ones we had talking to the Parks and Recs candidates. I thought that gave me a greater sense of who these people were. So having that as part of it, I think is great, and something that the public can see would be nice too.
Councilmember Beckman?
I agree with everything that's been said pretty much. The one thing that I'm hesitant about is to have some retired or outside interim. My limited experience with interim principals or superintendents or whatever, it'd be better to have, and as Councilmember Hamilton said, if the new hire, the new city manager wants some kind of a shadowing or transition, that's fine, but I would prefer it be Mr. Horn rather than some other person, outside person, especially outside person.
Yeah, I see no reason to have an outside person that has to be brought up to speed.
Yeah.
It just isn't efficient. I'd rather see Mr. Horn as the person right up until the end. Councilmember Hamilton?
As the only one who was here 20 years ago when we hired Mr. Horn, we did a national search. And Bill was already on staff. He was an assistant city manager here. But to his credit, he was the right choice. He outshined all of the finalists that we interviewed. And, I don't want to break my arm, pat myself on the back, but I think we did a hell of a job. So, but we did do a national search. The last time we were looking for a city manager, and Bill was the individual who rose to the top in that search. So,
Well, I think even when you have an internal candidate,
you've got to do
this is basically a seal of approval because they've gone through the competition of being compared to other people. In some ways they have an advantage, and in some ways it's a disadvantage. Mr. Horn, do you want to add anything to the conversation? No? All right. So would you all be willing to just at least find the firm that we think we will use when the time actually comes, rather than waiting? Ms. Aiken?
So, Mayor, there may be some difficulty in hiring a firm before you have a date, because typically these firms, they hire on for specific projects. and they have scheduling needs. So until you have a date, you may have a hard time finding a firm who wants to propose on this project. So that would be a potential difficulty.
And to add on to that, yeah, I agree with that. And most of our contracts when we're going out for RFP are for a defined time frame.
Right.
So they would say that, this proposal is good for X amount of time as well.
Okay. So then when the time comes, we are going to go out and find a national search firm. All right.
Well, but when the time comes, so if it's a 9-month, process, and we're here in November, and Mr. Horn has indicated, right, that you want to retire sometime in 2021?
Yeah, I think you all have expressed 2021 as an appropriate timing. Fine with me.
And I think we're looking at more of a 6-month, not 9-month process from start to finish. Wouldn't you say, Jennifer?
Anywhere in between. I mean, it could take the 9 months depending on, especially how far away, in terms of moving and how long the negotiations take. So, I mean.
If it takes a lot of negotiation, we'll go to somebody else.
But I think part of you all's concern was not replacing Pam and I at the same time, so.
That's correct. I think that was
So I was gonna be the lead.
But Ms. Aiken has said you want to be out of here by the end of 2021?
Yes.
earlier than that.
Earlier than that?
2021 is fine.
I mean, truthfully, I will not be surprised, or I would be surprised if Pam wasn't out before Bill.
Well, we're not trying to push anybody out.
I'm not pushing anybody out. I'm just saying, I think.
Well, I will tell you this, I will commit to give you 6 months' notice.
Okay.
So you will have plenty of time,
Okay.
and I'm not giving notice today. Just clear.
All right.
And Mr. Horn's you leave after? So you're going to give us 6 months? And Mr. Horn's going to leave?
We don't know.
I mean, whenever?
We'll see
Okay.
when Mr. Horn will leave when he decides.
Sure.
What that is.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
All right, item 15.3 is give guidance to Sean Schrader concerning the Noise Abatement Task Force Committee.
I don't understand what we're supposed to do. I mean, he just goes to the meetings and, we don't know what the agenda and what the information to be provided at the meeting is before the meeting, do we?
No, but when his appointment came up, it was council's request at that meeting to have a discussion to provide some guidance to Mr. Schrader.
I mean, I sent him an email that all of you saw, and all I said was, his job is a balancing act. We want to protect our citizens' quality of life that are in the flight path for PI, and at the same time understanding that Allegiant, which is pretty much the only tenant down there, makes an enormous difference for tourism in Pinellas County. They're one of the great feeder airlines, and also they do complete packages, so they do drive a lot of business that helps our economy. And so my only comment to him was, that is a balancing act.
Good advice.
And I think Sean is highly, he's a very intelligent young man. I think he's highly capable of weighing the evidence, participating in the discussion, and representing probably the majority of our community's position. I think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the majority of Clearwater people don't want a plane flying right over their house. So I would think he should be able to do it. And if he has any questions, he can say, you know what, and this happens at many things where a representative on that committee or on that board will say, I'm not ready to vote on this because I'm not sure, based on who I'm representing, I'm not sure I'm ready to cast a vote because I'm not confident that that vote is exactly where it would be. So I need to go back to my people and have a discussion so that I can come back at the next meeting and we can vote on this at the next meeting. And in that case, then Sean can bring us the issue. We can have the discussion and give him his direction to go at the next meeting where he should be.
Well, I hope he's using Mr. Chesney as a
Yeah,
sounding board as well.
definitely.
Are we allowing that? Have they ever
We
met?
can, if it's okay with council, I can contact Mr. Schrader and just let him know about the conversation, have him watch it, but then advise him and make sure that Mr. Chesney's aware of the request as well.
Rose, has he actually been selected by the county?
Yes, he has. He's already been appointed.
So other questions or comments? None? No. All right. Nothing else for the good of the order? All right. Well, thank you all. We're going to adjourn the work session. We'll see you Thursday night.